This time on the Q Division podcast, we open the case of 1983's Never Say Never Again.
This episode, Fatima Blush, a woman who loves her job more than any other person alive, enters our Henchman Hall of Fame.
A potential franchise dies in its infancy, and the killer is a bunch of men's egos.
And where can we buy that video game?
All that and more on this episode of the Q Division. Hello, agents. Welcome to another episode of the Q Division. I'm Gavin, and I've seen all the James Bond movies.
And I'm Chelsea, and I've seen 15 and a TV special. Do not ask me to name all 15. I will fail.
Oh, that's the end of the episode, actually. So you better pull up a list, because we're going for it. The Q Division's top secret mission is to take a deeper look at the history and impact of the James Bond films and other media through a queer lens. Speaking of, the Q Division is a proud member of the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective. You can find out more about Glitterjaw at glitterjaw.com. This episode, we're off the beaten path. So we knew we'd need an agent that has a history with Bond and the legalese to help us untangle the wicked web of Never Say Never Again. So we thought, who better than writer, comedian, and fellow podcaster, Harry Steele. Harry, welcome to the show.
I love that you think I have the legalese to untangle this, because I think no one is possibly able to do that. We'd need a 00 agent to do this, I guess. You just shoot everyone involved, though. That's how they do things in the 00 section.
Yeah, truly, if there was somebody to handle this, I'm pretty sure Kevin McClory would have been dead a lot earlier than he was.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense? Have an HR department? I mean, the amount of times Bond would be in the docket for all the harassment cases they'd get.
One of my favorite things is very late in the Roger Moore era, where they keep adding new MI6 jobs, like in Octopussy, when they're like, "This is our art history expert," and then in A View to a Kill, which we've not gotten to yet, Chels, but you'll get to meet their master of horse husbandry or whatever it is that Patrick McNee does.
What
hasn't Bond done yet? Era.
Yes.
The 007 films.
Exactly.
Thank you for having me on. As you say, I am a big time Bond fan, and I've been really enjoying this podcast that you're doing. Not only for the queer angle, I am myself, I'm not queer, and that's why I thought you might have asked me to come on this particular episode, because it's a bit of a weird one. But also, you're a fan of Bond, Gavin, but you enjoy it all, and it's what's so interesting about this franchise to me is that I don't want to be Bond. I think James Bond's a bit of an arsehole, really, especially in the books. I think the books are fascinating because in a book you can have somebody who's a really terrible person but is also the right man for the job. But in the films, Bond he's like a state-sanctioned assassin, but also advertises Coke Zero and Heineken beer. And I find one of the oddest moments in Bond's history was in 2012 when James Bond skydived into the London Olympics with the Queen.
Yes, correct.
And all the countries watching, like, how many times has he gone into sovereign states and murdered people? It's like, and I just think Bond, so I don't want to be Bond, but I think he's a wonderful lens to look at Britain and maybe the world through. I'm trying to think of the equivalent in the States, but I know there's a lot. I mean, you could say Superman or Batman, but I'm thinking characters who've existed forever, and every few years there's a new interpretation. You see cinema and society change throughout the years, you know?
Spider-Man's the closest thing I can think of pop culturally, but also I don't know if Spider-Man in the films, especially the recent ones, has a lot to say about culture.
Right. Yeah. I think Batman is actually a really interesting comparison because Superman actually doesn't do well overseas. Superman does better in the US than he does anywhere else. And I think it goes back to the truth, justice, American way idea, which they haven't even really used in Superman media since the 90s. I feel like everybody's tried to subvert that since then. But I think you bring up an interesting point too about how James Bond is both a good reflection of British society, and honestly, I can't speak to it because I'm not British, but I sure can comment on it a lot on this show, but also the world at large, because it's very easy to forget that even though the film James Bond is a symbol for Britain, it's a very American style action
Ooh,
film series, like spearheaded by Canadian. and
ooh.
so and so there's a lot of interesting elements at play there.
I think a lot of the time a foreigner will come to a country. I don't know if foreigner is the correct word, but they come to a country and often do the best interpretation of that society. I think of Paul Verhoeven in the RoboCop film,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I don't think it's the end of the world if an American is going to make a Bond film, and the next Bond film is going to be made by a Canadian, Denis Villeneuve, and I don't know. I'm more of a Roger Moore fan, so I'm interested to see if it's possible for him to make something fun.
To make a
I,
joke.
I mean, I would say Dune Part Two is surprisingly funny, but that was like that was like a little bit of seasoning, spice, as it were, to his Dune film. Yeah, I know. Sorry, I like a dad joke, and that's why I like the Bond series.
Yes, 100%. Two things just real quick before we really start diving in. One is that you've brought up, clearly you're British. What is your history with James Bond? What is the thing that sort of got you into James Bond? I know it's sort of in the water over
Oh,
there.
it's part of the education system. It's like history, maths with an S, James Bond, Carry On movies. It's those
Thank you.
are nurse studies. I'm actually watching all the Carry On movies at the moment for the first time. There's another podcast I listen to called Carry On Up the Podcast. And again, you're watching films from the 50s up until the 90s and seeing how society and films change. But with Bond, I honestly can't remember the first Bond film I watched. Weirdly, my first Bond memory is me reenacting the Moonraker skydiving sequence with a friend. So we went skydiving, I hasten to add. We weren't on top of a building and then giving it a go. But my friend was called James, and so naturally I played Jaws, and we just pretend we were parachuting. But then it's always on the TV, and I was born in '83, which this film comes out. So I have this high opinion of myself where I was born the year two Bond films came out. Oh my God, what does that mean? Um, but I missed License to Kill in the cinema because that in the UK was rated 15, and so I wasn't quite old enough to see that. Um, I don't know. Is License to Kill rated R in the US or is it PG-13?
It is not, and we will talk about that in the episode.
Yes.
Interesting. So I think you can get away with a lot of things because it's James Bond, because it has this sort of prestige to it. At least especially now where I think off mic we're talking about how the Bond films now are perhaps too prestigious. Every Bond film is a major event
Yeah.
when they are at the heart B movies with a bit of gloss.
Mhm.
So I missed License to Kill, but then Golden Eye came out in 95 or 4, I think. And that was the first Bond film I saw at the cinema. And of course, like when a new Doctor Who arrives, like a new Bond is exciting and the fandom increases. And then, oh yes, Cheryl showing me, is that just the 13th Doctor? Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah,
Don't worry, my
Amazing.
other ones are like that way behind
like
us.
again, big Doctor Who fan. And so that has sort of a cross, you get to see culture evolve. But a few years, I think when 97 was coming around, my mum for a present, she got me a book called like Kiss Kiss Cat Bang Bang, the unofficial James Bond film companion. And it's funny enough, out of all the pictures they could have chosen at the front, it has Sean Connery in Never Say Never Again at the front. Um,
That
and
is
that was
really funny.
that's the first time I really got a sense of the film. How the book is a collection of making ofs all the films, and there's been a few newer books since then. There's been some kind of hero, like a lot of Bond books now are little making ofs all the films, and that really kind of opened my eyes to how these films are made, all the behind the scenes stuff, and at the end, every film gets like a ranking out of 100. And yeah, I think that was the thing which supercharged my fandom, and it also helps that GoldenEye, the video game, was amazing.
Yeah.
You
That
you
comes up a lot amongst people our
peop
age
yeah,
in terms of
exactly.
guests.
I mean, it helps us like it was a fantastic Bond film, a fantastic Bond game. I think Bond really found its juice. And well, it's debatable that Pierce Brosnan's era ever got as good as GoldenEye. It was, I think, was good enough to really keep the fandom going. People forget that Die Another Day, which has got a bad reputation in terms of quality, was still the most successful Bond film of that time.
Yeah, hugely
So
profitable.
same with Moonraker. Like these films, which are meant to be the worst ones ever, they got to do something right because they do repeat business and the masses enjoy it.
I thought Moonraker was a masterpiece.
I love Moonraker. Hugo Drax is my favorite Bond villain.
He's the best.
He's so good. Every
Yeah.
part of that movie is great. I love that you played Jaws in your childhood
Yeah.
games because Jaws is the hero of that movie. I love
Yeah.
him.
And perhaps this film has a henchman who is the hero too.
I agree. Oh, good. I'm very excited to talk about Fatima. The other thing, the one last thing I want to mention is, you brought up that you are straight. Our last guest was also straight, and you are both of you asked, did you invite me on specifically to talk about these movies because both of them feel very heterosexual? And listen, I'm not saying that is what happened. I'm just saying, please stop rubbing your lifestyle in our faces. We don't need our children to see it. Or in the schools. No, seriously, it is really funny because I do think something very interesting about this film is I think this film, more than anything else that came before James Bond, changes the Eon Bond film series. And we'll talk about it more when we get through it. This episode is going to structurally be the same as our previous episodes, but I think this is going to be a very different episode because something like this has never happened in the history of cinema ever.
It would be kind of like if someone was making another Wizard of Oz film the same year as they were releasing like Wicked or Wicked for Good. Like technically they're allowed to, it's possible, but it's just bananas. And I also just want to say on the whole sort of hetero queer side of things and James Bond in general, I think there's not many things I like the internet about. I mean, hey, I'm talking to two folks from America about James Bond. What could be better? One of the amazing things I found about the internet, I'm not a huge fan of the internet, but growing up, I thought the Bond series was like the most hetero thing ever. And I was really kind of embarrassed. Whenever I say I'm a Bond fan, even today, I'm like, yeah, I like James Bond, but, and you can see someone's face sort of contort. But no, I don't. I'm not a misogynist, I think. I'm not racist, I hope. But I found so many queer Bond fans online, or I just thought it was just for straight white men, but I found lots of female Bond fans, non-binary Bond fans. I've watched a documentary with Mark Gatiss in it, and he said he felt that part of the reason queer people like Bond is that everyone's growing up, you had to hide a part of yourself for so much of your life, and that sort of I don't want to straight explain anything to you guys, but
it doesn't come off that way.
It resonates, I think. And so, yeah, I think one of the most delightful things about the internet for me, when COVID happened, I met a whole bunch of James Bond fans online where we watched a James Bond film every Sunday night together.
I love
so
that.
I was chatting about Bond with people from Brazil, from Germany, from Canada. It's like, we're going by watch 007. So, yeah, I think one of the nicest things about internet and my later stage Bond fandom is meeting loads of people online with loads of different backgrounds, and we all love this character, which can be read in so many different ways.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that before on this episode. Some of our previous guests have said it. David Lowbridge Ellis, who runs License to Queer, said the same thing. I do think when you like something like this, it does feel like, I mean, my husband is literally always like, yeah, James Bond is like a colonialist fascist. Like, I have no idea why.
100%.
But I was like, but there's all these other interesting things going on that are, much more interesting than just that angle. And I worry sometimes that when I say that on this show, that's going to turn off some hardcore Bond fans. But even as you were saying before we began this, I think there is a way, an ability to be a fan of something, but to not just be a parrot for the things that like you want it to be or you want it to represent. Like, you have to be able to acknowledge the dirtier parts of it, the seedier parts of it, the more unpalatable parts of it. And obviously, like, that's not what draws us to James Bond, but we can't ignore the fact that they exist.
Yeah. Like, I had to do that on the Community Rewatch podcast because that show behind the scenes was a trash fire. And now I get to do it on my upcoming Doctor Who podcast where I'm like, this episode's great. fuck this turf.
Yeah, exactly.
Me and my brother Hamish, who's also on part of the Glitter Jaw Network, who got the Super Mario Moment, his podcast. But when he and I talk, we just moan about Doctor Who, and it's so much fun. So I'm looking forward to yours, Charles.
Please, we'll have you on as a guest because we're having a great time with people who are only nice.
And yeah, I think that's part of, collective experience as well, is getting together and enjoying, not just celebrating but also complaining a bit.
Yeah.
Before we really get into this film, Chels, since you're seeing these for the first time, how are you doing? How are you feeling after Never Say Never Again?
Allegedly, I have seen this movie because it is a thunderball, but also the way I did not remember any of Thunderball, I'm like, wait, I know this is technically like the same kind of movie, same beats. I was so lost because this is also like Rambo meets Wild Hogs, the Robin Williams, Tim Allen film of old men just like trying to do something, and I'm like, what is going on here? The tone of the first, I'd say third of this movie is so weird, and then I think it becomes kind of a real movie, but then it dips back into that weirdness of like, why do we have to comment on his age for everything? They don't do that with Roger Moore, and Roger Moore is
Exactly.
older. So this
Well,
movie it felt like an experiment.
just wait until A View to a Kill, when apparently the top British agent in the Secret Service is pushing 60.
Yeah.
And you think, really?
Much like your screen name, he's the only man who can, Harry. So that's
Indeed.
it's really fascinating for two reasons. One, because it clearly feels kind of Connery driven, that Connery wants to comment on the fact that he's older now, even, but like you said, it's sort of oppressive in this film. This movie shouldn't exist, but I do think it has some interesting, like, there are certainly bits in it when it feels more like a Bond movie than some of the Roger Moore era stuff. Like, it really does bring it back to the classic. Not a ton. And I don't want to like celebrate this movie too much because I don't love it, but I do have a good time watching it. And like I literally let out some huge guffaws at points, and because some of it is intentionally funny and some of it is unintentionally funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm on your wave, Kevin. Although I'm a huge Bond fan, because this is not an official
Yep.
Bond film, and you'll explain that in a moment. I had barely seen this tour. I'm sure I had watched it as a kid when all the Bond films are super interchangeable, and like at one point, Mr. Bean shows up, and you're like, "What? Who?
Yeah.
Why is
I
Rowan
did say
Atkinson there?"
Mr. Bean, and it
Yeah, or
turns out
maybe
one of his first
Jo-
things he did.
and maybe it's Johnny English, perhaps if we're going a bit later in his career, but they're all the same. But then, crucially, they were never part of any James Bond box set. I got like the DVD box set, and then I got the Blu-ray box set, and
Yep.
it's not there. Did you know there was like a class action lawsuit about that?
Yeah.
I love lawsuits.
And in terms of like the Blu-ray box set, yeah, there was a class action lawsuit where somebody bought the quote unquote complete James Bond box set, but then the rights for Never Say Never Again got back to MGM. Long story short, she was like, "Hey, this doesn't have all the James Bond films like it says on the Blu-ray box set," and she took the people to court. And eventually, the studio relented and said everyone can get a digital copy of Never Say Never Again. I couldn't because I didn't have the proof of purchase, but it's just that was an interesting thing.
I will say I was deeply confused watching so much of the quote unquote plot of this movie because I'm like, is this a plot or is this a commentary on his age right now? And then so much of it was kind of confusing, but also very simple. So I don't know what it says about me.
It's really funny. He's in better shape in this movie than he's in Diamonds Are Forever, his final like
Yes.
official Eon Bond movie. And not to comment too much on it because I think he looks fine in Diamonds Are Forever. He's got a very daddy-esque thing going on. But this is actually like buff Sean Connery, and it's wild because it's a decade later.
Okay,
Yeah.
this goes to my theory that some men just get hotter with age. Not Timothée Chalamet, because I think he's getting worse with age.
Oh my
But
God, and he needs to shut up, but that's neither
it's
here nor
true.
there.
But Sean Connery in this movie, I think, is hotter than all of his other movies. I'm like, there's just something about this that really works. I don't know if it's just better tailoring on the suits or just like he's not wearing the worst hair pieces. They actually are not terrible. But I'm like, he is very attractive right now for being kind of a creepy old man.
Here's the thing. I think this film, no, I actually agree with you, Gavin. I don't think it's a good film, but I think I enjoy it a heck of a lot sometimes. Well, I enjoy it. Um, and crucially, I feel it's much more interesting to watch than Thunderball.
Yeah, I think
Thunderball
that's true.
is a real drag. But I feel the big Achilles heel of this whole endeavor is that it's kind of made out of spite. I think Connery is only in this film to say fuck you to Eon, who made Bond films, and Kevin McClory didn't have to make this film. He was legally entitled to, but I think the kind of tragedy about this whole thing is that he had a massive chip on the shoulder and wanted to prove to everyone that him alone almost, created the cinematic interpretation of James Bond. He wanted to show that nobody did it better than he.
Exactly.
And so I think Connery couldn't care less about Diamonds Are Forever when he was making it. But here he's like, I'm going to show you what a real James Bond is like.
Yeah.
But then everything went wrong during the making of the film.
And he was a little rude about Roger Moore's James Bond in a way that Roger Moore never was about Connery's Bond. And I do think that also kind of tells you a little bit about who Sean Connery is and who Roger Moore is.
I feel that Roger, which I think he may have inherited in part from after Diamonds Are Forever, where they were already getting into that area of too much hardware, that was more important, and his is a sort of parody of the character, as it were, in that situation, so that you will go for the laugh or the humor at whatever the cost of the credibility or the reality. I think that's just basically the difference. And I think he took another direction with it that way and acquired an entirely different audience.
If you say who's the best Bond, I say, well, obviously Sean was. He created a character that became part of British film history.
I would just like to say real quick about his physique as well. It's easy to forget this is also not the way Connery looks at this time specifically.
Yes.
Connery looks like the Connery from Highlander. So they had to do a lot to make him look like James Bond Connery, between the hair pieces, the body weight, and they did a great job. But it's very funny to watch some of the behind the scenes interviews from when he's not shooting, talking about this movie, and he looks like, I don't know, I want to say like Medicine Man era Sean Connery with like the balding and the long. Yeah.
Here's the thing. I support all gender affirming care.
Yes, absolutely. Especially when it comes to James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
What would this film have been like if Connery did look like later stage Connery? What would that have been like? And would this film, like the big get, of course, is that they got Connery. What if they didn't? I feel the only reason we're talking about this film possibly is because Connery is in it. I think if there was any other actor, it would have sunk like a stone. I think everything would have fallen apart. It was just this insane get that they got Connery. And I think, again, just because he wanted his money and to just say fuck you to everyone else.
And
Absolutely.
to be fair,
Not
Eon
everyone.
could have paid him so much more for those earlier films.
I mean, perhaps we
back pay.
Perhaps we should get into the whole story of it all, but I feel there's everyone comes out a little bit dirty in this thing. I don't think there's nobody's completely in the right, but I also completely understand where like almost everyone is coming from.
Who played the first Bond villain?
Cubby Broccoli.
It's one of those situations where, much like occasionally in Bond, no one is the hero. All right, let's get into production and talk about some of the confusing nature of the existence of this film at all. So I'm going to fold book and production talk into one section this time, as there really isn't a book except for Thunderball, and there isn't a Thunderball without a screenplay predating the book, and there isn't that without Jack Whittingham and Kevin McClory, and there isn't James Bond without Ian Fleming. So are you confused yet? Hopefully you won't be when we're done.
I stay confused. What are you talking about?
Let's take the Q-Division time machine back once more to our episode on Thunderball with Jesse Garcia. Thank you again, Jesse. Good luck with your latest mission. Back to when Ian Fleming was alive and seeking to turn Bond into a film prior to the successful film series that would come afterwards. Fleming worked with independent producer Kevin McClory and screenwriter Jack Whittingham on a screenplay initially titled Longitude 78 West. However, the screenplay was scrapped because of cost measures after going through multiple drafts and names, and Fleming, feeling as though he could move on from that, decided to pen the novel version of Thunderball without crediting McClory or Whittingham, but still using their contributions to the story. Long story short, in several court cases later, the stress of one people often cite as a significant factor in Fleming's eventual death. McClory made out with the rights to produce a film based off Thunderball, and Fleming got to keep the publishing rights of the book.
I like how it was the court case which probably causes heart attacks and not all the fags. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I'm a Brit. I meant cigarettes.
Yes.
All of the cigarettes.
Well, I mean, and we're going to bring up this book in a moment, the book that you actually recommended to me, the Battle for Bond, which came out in 2007. But I love the fact that they bring up the fact that after his first heart attack, he asked his doctor, what is the least amount of alcohol he could have a day, because his doctor was like, you have to stop drinking. And his doctor gave him a measurement, and he started specifically drinking Saint Germain after that because it has the most highest alcohol content in it.
Sweet Jesus. Yes, the court case is what killed him.
Yeah, definitely that. And also, this does get glossed over a bit, as you say, in the Eon telling of it. Let's be clear. He was writing a series of successful books. I love the books, but they are not action adventures. They are
Right.
kind of detective novels, really, with a spy. And it was Kevin McClory and Jack Whittingham. And they also hired an artist called Stephen Grimes to do these pictures of what a Bond film could be like. And it's crazy. These are mid-50s pictures of what a James Bond film could be like. They did all this work to make this film, which fell through. And then Ian Fleming was like, I'm just going to take all your work and put it into my own book. I feel in the case, Kevin McClory is absolutely correct. I feel that Ian Fleming was absolutely in the wrong.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, yeah.
And is very entitled and very you do get an attitude that he's just like, it's privilege, basically. I know James Bond is his creation, but I feel that he just doesn't really care that those people contributed to his novel. It's just lazy and a bit rubbish.
Yeah, I often feel the same way. Like, I agree. Ian Fleming created this character. There would be no James Bond for Thunderball without Ian Fleming. But you also can't invite other people to help you create and then not credit their ideas. That's not how any of this works. Speaking of, so McClory maybe made out with a pretty good deal in this lawsuit, but the real unfortunate loser here is Jack Whittingham, who got the short end of the stick, as by the time the plagiarism lawsuit came about for his end, Fleming had died, and you can't sue a dead person for plagiarism. He probably could have gone after the estate. It probably wouldn't have gone well. So he basically sort of walked away with not a ton. This is, of course, an incredible Cliff's Notes version of what happened, and for a much more detailed account, I recommend the 2007 nonfiction book, The Battle for Bond by Robert Sellers, which was actually recommended to me by our guest Harry Steele. The book, unfortunately, appears to be out of print, but I got my hands on a copy because, much like diamonds, the internet is forever.
I would recommend it, even if you're not interested in Bond. It's just a fascinating story of hubris and backstabbing and the machinations to get films made.
Love that.
It kind of details it out like a nighttime telly version of it, which is fantastic, honestly. So cut to the 1960s when Eon was looking to make their Bond movies. They hired Richard Maibaum, frequently named here, to write Thunderball first. But when they realized it was a rights nightmare, they moved on and started with Dr. No instead, which once again was also worked on by writer Joanna Harwood, who does not get enough credit for her contributions to the filmic James Bond. I just like mentioning that because I think her name is often left off, even though, Richard Maibaum gets a lot of the credit, but she added a lot for those first two films.
And I would just like to say, as a fan of this particular podcast, that was a huge fact I didn't know. And so I was so pleased to learn something from, I've listened to quite a few James Bond podcasts, and this was a fact I had not heard before. So yeah, good stuff.
And I don't want to dismiss any other James Bond podcasters or what
they're
they're
all
doing,
different. They're different Bonds. You've got a Bond for every season, a podcast for every mood.
But I would be remiss, especially on this podcast, when we are claiming to look at things both through queer and feminist lens, if we did not bring up the fact that a woman was involved in the creation, because there are often times when something like this happens, especially if it dates back to the 60s, the men are celebrated and the women are overlooked. And
Much like
so-
the Doctor Who theme song.
yeah,
Woman, y'all.
Joanna Harwood.
Barbara Broccoli has been stewarding it for some time now.
Yes. Yeah. And we, it's funny because we're like getting into her era. And so I'm very excited because I actually really like Barbara Broccoli. The Broccoli family has its faults, as any rich mogul family has, but I kind of like them. And I feel like hopefully my bias is not shown, but I feel like I have a soft spot for them on this show. Because I do like to point out when Albert R. Broccoli does nice things, because I think I've met a lot of people in charge of things. A lot of them are not as nice as seemingly Albert Broccoli has been reported to have been. So, unless you ask Sean Connery. I only bring up this first Thunderball screenplay because, much like I have been teasing in the past, that unused screenplay will have a featured role in further legal bond history in a later episode. By the time Eon and Don Jock got to Thunderball, 3 films into their series already, they decided to cut a deal with McClory, making him the sole producer of that film, and Harry Saltzman, remember him, and Albert R. Broccoli, executive producers on the film, with the stipulation that McClory could not make another film based off of Thunderball for 10 years. And that's just what McClory decided to do. By the mid-1970s, he'd begun to try and get his Thunderball remake off the ground, first by going after Albert R. Broccoli's production of The Spy Who Loved Me, suing them to keep them from using the character Blofeld and the organization Spectre in the early scripts. Feel free to listen to our The Spy Who Loved Me episode with guest agent Sophia Simonello, who is also currently on assignment, for more info on that. And then by fully moving into the scripting phase of his own project, a film he had hoped to call either Warhead or James Bond of the Secret Service, which Eon was not going to let happen. Eon was like, you can't name it that.
Kevin's whole life was Bond. He lived, ate, breathed Thunderball. It was an obsession. They couldn't have had any idea how tenacious he would be about his rights.
We have a little problem with the bonds, mainly because as Broccoli and co. have their bonds, we have our bonds.
McClory, also being a smart businessman and knowing nothing could boost a rival Bond project more than the involvement of the original big screen James Bond, was able to convince Sean Connery to come aboard as co-writer on the screenplay with writer Len Dighton, in hopes that he would then be excited enough to play Bond once more. One passage of the book, The Battle for Bond, quotes this screenplay as describing one of the characters as such: Bomba, Largo's black, muscle-bound henchman, who, according to the script, makes Muhammad Ali look like a fag. Thanks for keeping it classy as always, Mr. Connery.
Does he mean he looks like a cigarette to that because I'm British?
Yes.
Totally.
Correct.
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
that is
just-
absolutely what Connery meant.
Okay, good. Okay.
I dated a Scottish girl once. Yes, I've dated women.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Dated
Shocking.
a Scottish person.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
Oh.
And she was convinced that Connery was going to elocution lessons to keep his Scottish accent, because she's like, no one has a Scottish accent that sounds like that. She's like, he is doing a parody of Scottish people, and he's like trying to keep it up. I thought this was
I
a very
would
funny
like to
conspiracy
continue
theory.
this rumor. Sean Connery, Scottish question mark?
Well, also, isn't Pierce Brosnan like famously? He left Ireland when he was so young. So when he comes back to Ireland and plays Irish characters, he does a terrible Irish accent.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
that's true. I do know that much.
Amazing. And as a massive fan of Highlander, again with Sean Connery, if the new Highlander film of Henry Cavill doesn't have accents all over the place,
Yes.
it's not going to be a Highlander film.
You know
That's
what? Hire Julia Roberts, because her accent in Mary Riley is my favorite thing in the world. It's
Let's check
20
this out.
accents in one sentence.
That's the beauty of Highlander, is that you have Sean Connery as a character named Ramirez, who's like, yes, I'm Egyptian. I served in the Spanish court. Look at my Japanese katana. Like, what? What are you talking
mean,
about?
I went to a Comic-Con recently, and there was a man who had like grey hair, beard, bald. He did he was dressed as Ramirez from Highlander.
Amazing.
And then the next day he was dressed as Connery in Last Crusade, and he's just living his best life.
Good for them. Last Crusade Connery is hottest Connery, by the way. listeners.
I really hope that he also, if there was a third day, did Zardoz. You got to be body confident, but I hope
he was with
did.
his kid, and his kid is dressed as
Oh.
a cute little as a Connor McLeod of the Clan McLeods.
Oh, amazing. I
But
love
yeah,
families
again, that's
who
just
are
what I
nerds.
like about Bond and talking about Connor and things. He's such an asshole. I mean, again, he doesn't suffer fools. That's the thing. I'd be terrified of the man because
Yeah.
I am a fool. And I think he once called Brett Ratner a bucket of smoke, which I think is awesome.
Oh, that's actually brilliant.
Also accurate.
Yeah, that's a great expression. A bucket
mean,
of smoke.
This is teasing what's coming ahead, but most of the people making this film do not come out not facing Connery's wrath either. So if you thought Eon was the reason that Connery retired from Bond, this is the real reason. This is what makes him go never, truly never again. Paramount Pictures purchased the rights to that script in 1978. However, Don Jock and United Artists, who were currently co-owners of the Eon Bond franchise at that point, were over Kevin McClory's shoulders the whole time. They couldn't do anything about it other than try and keep it from happening. You see, the findings in the court case said McClory only had the rights to make the film a Thunderball, and as far as Eon was concerned, any film involving the Bermuda Triangle that ended with a secret Spectre base hidden inside the Statue of Liberty with Bond fighting robotic sharks through the sewers of New York City to stop a nuclear bomb did not exactly resemble the original Thunderball screenplay he had a hand in. That and the cost would have been unheard of for the 70s, so it seemed McClory's dream of a competing Bond franchise was once again scuttled.
The thing which got him on board was that script you mentioned, and I can imagine
that he co-wrote.
Page 90 with the mechanical sharks with nukes hidden inside him. It was, I'm on board with this.
Yeah.
Kind of explains why he starred in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's like, this sounds legit.
This sounds like a movie that like my 5-year-old nephew made up like on the playground. Like that is the energy brought to this was child at playground. And I love that. I would watch that.
If only that energy was in like a Daniel Craig movie where they just threw all the Jason Bourneisms out of the window and he's fighting.
And we know Daniel Craig can be funny now.
He can, yeah. He's discovered his funny bone.
So that all happens. It seems like the end of the dream for McClory until enter producer Jack Schwartzman, husband of Rocky's own Talia Shire and future father of Jason Schwartzman. He actually maybe had Jason Schwartzman at this point. I'm trying to remember like the timeline in terms of when Jason was born. Through his company, Talia Film convinced Kevin McClory to license the project to him, scrapping the Warhead screenplay and conceiving his film as a full-on remake of the Thunderball novel.
My late husband, Jack Schwartzman, who was originally an entertainment attorney, and it became known that the rights were now available to remake Thunderball. As an attorney, he felt that this was a totally legally doable project.
He thought it would be a fantastic coup to go outside the studio system and do a Bond picture.
What Jack did was convince Sean that this could be done, that Sean would have so much of his input in the shaping what would be his last time playing James Bond.
Now, that's an interesting companion because this is also not really the novel, but we'll go with it. Schwartzman first hired Julian Plowden to write the script, and on the strength of that script, he was able to convince the hesitant to star but already involved Connery into stepping back into James Bond's dress shoes. However, after early drafts, Plowden recommended writer Lorenzo Semple Jr., who had been the co-writer of The Parallax View and 3 Days of the Condor, but more importantly, was the executive producer of the 1966 Batman TV show with Adam West, having written the first 4 episodes as well as the film spin-off.
Oh, so creator of masterpieces is what we're saying.
Yes, absolutely. You don't just get anyone to copy the Mona Lisa. Semple, however, eventually left the project due to Schwartzman's continual cutting of large set pieces as they were scripted. And after that, Connery approached Tom Mankiewicz, who said no due to loyalty to Albert R. Broccoli. Next, Connery hired writers Dick Clements and Ian La Frenais, who were brought on to do script touch-ups, creating the opening scene and Rowan Atkinson's entire character of Nigel Smallfawcett, though they were never credited for this rewrite. The two continued to work on the script throughout the shooting of the film. Kind of feels that way.
Kirsch and I work on the script a bit.
And I mean, there's no conflict of any kind to speak of. We sit down, and I'm told, with nobody's objection, do some rewrites, take this sequence out, take that sequence out to save money. Some of the action sequences. The impression was given that all these ideas, these changes were my horrible ideas. And that, you know, if I were removed, well, then everything would be okay. They could fix them.
We were kind of in that lovely position that writers are in when it's not your mess and you haven't, you know, all they can hope is that you may be able to help them out of it, but you didn't create the mess.
I thought they were terrific, but they should have been brought in the beginning. And they were unfortunately brought in at the end.
Because of the threat of litigation, they had been told at some point, you can only use the original dialogue from the book. It's impossible to write a screenplay where you only use dialogue from the book. It's insane. Everything had to be checked by the producer, by the director, by Sean, and then by the insurance company who were insuring the company against litigation. So they were checking through everything we wrote as well. So there were 4 sets of people checking every line that we wrote, which was extraordinary.
I mean, gosh, it's very. I used to think like Rowan Atkinson was throughout the entire film, but no, he's there. He's peppered in like 3 scenes.
Yeah.
And they're British TV comedy writers, so I think they lifted a joke from the TV show Porridge, which is the British legendary sitcom, where Connery has to fill a urine sample, and the lady is across the room, and he goes, "From over there." That's the sort of level of humor we're dealing with. It's an all right joke. I did actually show a friend that scene, and they just were like, "Huh."
Oh, that's a bummer, because I actually think I will say this. I have no idea through the arbitration what Lorenzo Semple did, and I have no idea what Plowden did, but I think they're funny, like their bits of humor actually work on occasion and make it feel, because this could be a real dour movie. Like you said, Chels, there are moments where this feels like Rambo.
Yeah. I mean, literally so much of it. But also just imagine Roger Moore like crushing these jokes. He would kill it.
Roger Moore would make them a little gayer too.
Oh,
honestly.
yeah.
This comes from the book Some Kind of Hero by Matthew Field and A.J. Chowdhury. They said, so these are the writers who were brought in. We had done enough to earn a credit, but that's down to the guild and we lost the arbitration. Connery begged the WGA to change their minds, but they were adamant. Semple was awarded sole screenplay credit because he was informed by a WGA insider that Clement and I can't pronounce his name either, Lafrenays did not have guild contracts. Somebody said to me, all the writing belongs to you until another guy signs a guild contract. So Semple followed guild rules out of principle. Bottom line, Semple's contract entitled him to a $100,000 bonus if he was awarded sole credit. So basically, by making sure that he got sole credit, he got the bonus.
Good for him. Also, everyone join your unions. You're not too good for them.
It's true. According to the book Battle for Bond, as well as the website Spy Movie Navigator, Schwartzman also received help from his brother-in-law, Francis Ford Coppola, on the production. However, Coppola passed on directing, a task that would go to director Irving Kershner, as he had just wrapped up directing a little film called The Empire Strikes Back. Kershner can thank his involvement in this film because he had worked with Connery on A Fine Madness in 1966 during his original tenure as James Bond. Connery had asked Peter R. Hunt, who had directed On Her Majesty's Secret Service, but he turned him down for the same reason Tom Mankiewicz did. Kershner brought on several members of the crew of Raiders of the Lost Ark to work on this film, including director of photography Douglas Slocum and production designers Philip Harrison and Stephen Grimes. I just gave them a shout out because I do think some of the production design, even though you can tell it's kind of on a budget, is very nice in this film. And I certainly think Dennis Slocum's cinematography is very nice at points. And you're pulling off something that's incredibly hard to do, which is matching a series that has been around for 20 years at this point and trying to make something new of it, but also trying to keep enough references in that keep the audience coming back.
So you mentioned Stephen Grimes, who was also the artist who did those original pictures way back in the 50s.
Yes.
So he ended up being involved in Never Say Never Again. Personally, I think the film looks crap. especially when you compare it to the cinematographer's other work, which is famously Raiders of the Lost Ark, all those shadows and it just looks great. I feel this film looks a bit like a TV movie at times.
Yes. It is very flat. I will give it that. But I don't know. I keep thinking of there's one shot and I know it's very silly because it's just an extreme close up of Barbara Carrera's eyes. But there's this shot where she sees Bond has survived his shark attack encounter, and she turns and it's this bright, like goldeny. I just think she looks so gorgeous in it that it's hard for me to say that the whole thing looks like crap. But you're not wrong. The movie does look incredibly flat at points.
I feel like Barbara Carrera is doing a lot of the work in that shot, perhaps.
Also true.
Love her.
Woman of my dreams. With Connery in place to the tune of $3 million, some sources say $5 million, but that's assumed to be a myth. They began filling out the rest of the cast, including previously mentioned model actress Barbara Carrera as assassin Fatima Blush, not featured in the novel, but a name that appeared in an early draft of the original Fleming McClory Whittingham screenplay. Carrera said she modeled her performance off the Hindu goddess Kali, as well as a combination of a black widow spider and a praying mantis. And for this performance, she was in fact nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. I put that in there because, honestly, being nominated in any other situation for a Golden Globe is not something to celebrate. But James Bond films do not get nominated for Golden Globes in this era. So good for her for being in the rival James Bond movie and getting a Golden Globe nomination.
And like the Golden Globes are one of my favorite scam organizations.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're even more scammy now that they're not the Hollywood Foreign Press Association.
Who could have seen that coming besides everyone?
Exactly. So I'm just like, what gift did they give to the Golden Globe voters, the Hollywood Foreign Press, to where she is nominated? Because this is the, like, people were scammer era, bribery, everything happening right now.
Klaus Maria Brandauer was cast as Maximilian Largo, standing in for Thunderball's Emil Largo. Max von Sydow as Ernst Stavro Blofeld, curiously petting a white cat, something that is not from the Bond novels and a direct lift from the Eon Bond film series. And the wife of Talia Shiar's then makeup artist, Ron Britton, a then 29-year-old new actress named Kim Basinger, to play Domino Petacci. Connery was 52 at the time, making him a cool 23 years her senior. Finally, Connery suggested Bernie Casey to play Felix Leiter, as he felt the character is often forgettable, so having a black person play him might make him more interesting. I guess no one pointed out to Connery that is the definition of tokenization, but at the very least, Casey got paid.
Yeah.
Also throwing huge shades at all the other Felix actors.
Yes, well, also that. Well, I think he still begrudged the one from Goldfinger who thought that, or no, the one from is it from
the
Russia?
Hawaii
No, the one,
Five-O guy?
Yeah, the one from Dr. No who thought he was going to be in Goldfinger with his name above the credits with Connery. Yeah.
Insane. Gavin, you will love who this actress lost the Golden Globe to.
Okay.
An Oscar-nominated performer, an icon, a legend, an alum of the Mamma Mia, Here We Go Again. Miss Cher herself beat her for a Golden Globe. For Silkwood. Great movie. Everyone go watch Silkwood.
I mean, losing to Cher, I would be fine
I would
with
love
that.
to lose to Cher.
Just to be in the same running as that.
Absolutely.
And also now I'm thinking Cher could have been amazing as Fatima Blush, but
oh my God, yeah.
She would have been incredible. Make Cher a Bond girl now.
She'd be a Bond villain.
I just, the whole Bernie Casey thing is so annoying to me because I get what Connery is trying to say by doing that, but literally being like, the only thing that would make him more interesting is changing his skin color. Like, it's that also downplays
literally
Bernie
saying,
Casey's
he'll
acting
be
ability.
memorable if he's black, and I'm like, Connery, dude.
Right.
But I think Casey did say one thing he appreciated, that his skin color was of no importance to the character.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So there was that too. So sometimes things can be done imperfectly.
Yeah.
But yes, by Connery outright saying, there's a lot of things Connery said, he should have just shut up. He should have just not said.
That's like his whole career. Ooh, just don't talk, baby. Shh.
Imagine Connery being on social media.
Oh my
just shut
God,
up.
imagine him with a Twitter account.
With a blue tick Connery. Maybe I should start my Twitter account if I want
Maybe
to.
you should, actually.
You should.
And I will say, I guess bully for them because Eon eventually does catch up when they cast Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter. in the Craig era, but also like they give him more interesting things to do. And that's what makes the character more interesting, not the fact that Jeffrey Wright happens to be black.
Yeah.
But you're right. And like, I guess I should give Casey that credit as well too, because I think he's quite good in this movie. And they do actually give Leiter something else to do. Like he seems actually valuable in that final set piece. Filming took place in at least 5 countries, including locations in the Bahamas and the French Riviera, with interiors being shot at the Elstree Studios in England. Filming was not smooth. Kirshner stated that Schwartzman was a good businessman, but a bad producer, and that he didn't have the experience for a production that large. In fact, Connery himself, with assistance from assistant director David Tomblin, took over many of the production duties. This led to tension between Schwartzman and Connery, to the point where Connery started pulling his old Saltzman trick of saying he wouldn't be on set at the same time as Schwartzman. Schwartzman also grossly underestimated how expensive the film would be, and as the movie began to run out of money, he started paying for the production out of his own pocket. Things got so bad that Connery was quoted as saying, "Schwartzman was totally incompetent, a real ass. In the middle of everything, he moved to the Bahamas with an unlisted number. It was like working in a toilet. I should have killed him," end quote.
Do you think Francis Ford Coppola got the idea of self-financing his latest megalopolis, whatever, from his former brother-in-law doing this with James Bond?
Jack Schwartzman had long been dead at that point, and
Yes.
B, I think if he did, he should have been like, actually, I learned that was a bad idea.
Men aren't going to learn anything. Not these kind of straight men.
I know it's a loaded phrase, a different time. Maybe Sean Connery was a different man, actually.
Yeah.
Because I found this quote when Connery was actually promoting the film. I mean, the film got, I don't want to step on your toes, Gavin, but the film got released in December 1983. It premiered, and there's Andrew, formerly known as Prince, was there in attendance.
Yes, and that is in my notes.
But also, I just got this quote here. When Sean Connery was promoting the film, he was on stage at the National Film Theatre, and he said, this is him on stage promoting the film, "I hate parasites. I hate incompetence. There's nothing I like better than a film that really works, providing that you don't have to deal with all the shit that comes afterwards in terms of getting what you're entitled to. But when you get into a situation where somebody who is totally incompetent is in charge, a real ass, then everything is a struggle. There was so much incompetence, ineptitude, and dissension during the making of Never Say Never Again that the film could have disintegrated. What I could have done just to let it bury itself. I walked away with an enormous amount of money, and the film would never have been finished. But once I was in there, I ended up getting in the middle of every decision. The assistant director and myself really produced the picture." Can you imagine him for just getting off stage and saying, "Enjoy the film"?
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thanks for coming. I've got things to say.
There was a big lawsuit going on between the other company that was doing their Bond. And so Jack Schwartzman was most of the time in court.
So there was no one in charge but the line producer, which is a big job for a line producer.
He said to me, at the time, looking back on the experience, he really needed to have more help, more seasoned, tougher help in making certain producerial decisions as the movie was going on.
It should have been a great deal more pleasure than it was. What I'm thrilled about is the huge success it's had, where it's opened and is still running, That's very reassuring and rewarding, both in one's own sense of work and financially. But it's unfortunate that yet again one has had to carry some incompetent.
That's what makes this film just fascinating, I think.
And here's the thing, in terms of that, he's not wrong. Movies are very hard to make. That's why I respect, in general, I respect anybody who can get a movie made and distributed. It's very hard, especially if you want to make a good one. But I can imagine just that guy thinking, oh, cool, my brother-in-law makes good movies. My wife is like Oscar-nominated actress. I can do this. And it's like, bro, no, making movies is a very difficult, complicated thing where you have to take your ego out of it sometimes and just play babysitter as a producer. And yeah, no, this guy sounds like a hot mess.
Well, also on a side note, one of the fight choreographers for this film was a new guy named Steven Seagal, who is a total piece of trash, just on the record of that, who actually broke Connery's wrist during training, something Connery didn't realize until years later. And I have the clip from The Tonight Show from like the 90s of Connery being like, yeah, I did not know that he broke my wrist until many years later.
But a number of years ago with a guy who's become very successful, Steven Seagal.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we're going to do a film called Never Say Never Again, and there was a possibility I was going to do Aikido and what have you, and I got a hold of Steven, and we had this training in the building where I had an apartment, and he was really very, very good and everything, and then I got a little cocky because I thought I knew what I was doing, because, you know, the principle is it's defense, so it's a pyramid, and I got a bit flash, and I did that, and he broke my wrist.
Wow.
And, oh yeah, and it was... so well put together here, I still have it broken.
Is it still broken?
Yeah, that's 15 years ago.
And it's still broken?
Yeah, I just found out last year.
A fight choreographer is there so you don't break bones.
Steven Seagal fucking sucks, Chels.
He does fucking suck. Like,
Yes,
fuck
just
that
to
guy.
reiterate.
Yeah.
Like, he's always been bad at his jobs.
In terms of music, Michael Legrand was chosen to score the film. After supposedly Connery nixed James Horner, Kirshner had liked his work on Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, and James Horner would have been much better, honestly. And John Barry actually said no to scoring the movie, once again, over allegiance to Albert R. Broccoli. And I just love the fact that Connery keeps asking Albert R. Broccoli people, and they're like, come on, man. Like, don't put me in that situation. Legrand also composed the theme song Never Say Never Again, which featured lyrics by Alan and Marilyn Bergman, and was performed by Lonnie Hall. Apparently, Bonnie Tyler turned them down because she didn't like the song.
I was really, wow, a James Bond theme, you know, and I was so excited to be part of this, you know. And then I listened to it and I was really deflated, you know. There wasn't anything you could do with that song, I didn't think, you know. I really didn't like it. And I thought, well, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb for only one reason. It's a bit of a naff song, you know.
In fact, the score itself has often been criticized as a weaker part of the film. Phyllis Hyman also submitted a theme written by Stephen Forsythe with lyrics by Jim Ryan, but it was turned down as Legrand had contractual rights to write the song himself. I have both the original song, or the song that was sung by Phyllis Hyman, which you can hear now.
I'll never say never again.
And then I have the song that was used in this film.
Never say never again. Never say never again. Never say never again.
And I'm here to say they both suck.
Yeah, annoyingly, it's also an earworm. And
Yes.
I've had Never Say Never Again rolling around my head. You told me about this a few weeks ago, and I've just had Never Say Never Again on repeat in my head since then. So thank you.
Do you prefer these songs or the Justin Bieber Never Say Never?
As somebody who has never heard the Justin Bieber song, I gotta say that one.
Probably that
For
one.
me, that film Never Stop for Never Stopping. And
Never say,
I think
that I've seen many times.
Oh,
yes,
masterpiece.
if only.
If I'm gonna as an editor, I'm gonna re-edit the opening sequence of this movie and set it to "I'm Not Gay."
Please do.
I will say this. There was a great special. I keep stealing clips from it. I've not really shouted it out on the show before, but it came out in the early 2000s. It was a British special about the music of James Bond, and they even covered this song, and they got to interview Bonnie Tyler, and she does not mince words about how much she hated this song and why she turned it down.
It's not something you turn down lightly, a James Bond theme, you know. But they did. And I kind of, in some ways, I regret not doing it. But It was the right decision in the end.
I find it like a baffling choice to start the film. It really gives you, oh no, energy.
Yeah, it is. It sort of looms over it. As you previously mentioned, the film opened on October 7th, 1983, the same year as the Eon Bond film Octopussy, taking in almost $11 million on its opening weekend and having the largest opening of any James Bond film at that point in history. And I only say that because I'm sure the Eon Bond series would love to claim that this movie was a flop in all the ways that it was a flop, but financially, at first, it was not. And it was worrisome to them. And it's a bit of revisionist history because it does not end up making as much as Octopussy. So let me finish the facts on that. It was the first James Bond film to actually be released in the Soviet Union. But while it may have won that battle, it ultimately lost the war. Even though the film grossed $160 million on a $36 million budget, Octopussy made $187.5 million, proving that even the Call of Connery could not wrest the control of Bond from the Eon film series. But I do want to say, it was a true contender. And that's another scary, freaky thing for them. And admittedly, I think it's one of those things where people talk about how it was a huge disaster and everything. And obviously financials are not the mark of full success, but it was financially a successful film. It just was not as successful as Octopussy.
Mm-hmm.
Never Say Never Again, I think, proved the point that a Bond film cannot exist with just one element alone. Just having Sean wasn't enough.
It is seeing the band back together, the band being Sean Connery.
Yes.
I'm just trying to think of equivalent. I mean, all I can think of actually is Michael Keaton returning for that Flash movie.
I know.
And
oh my God.
That film was was crap. I actually love CGI babies falling through the sky. That's a whole other thing. But, I would not have seen that film unless I could see Michael Keaton in the batsuit one more time. I think there's that with Connery returning as Bond.
It's very Robert Downey Jr. is going to come back for another Avengers.
Oh, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
See.
That's the world we live in now.
Yep. Don't worry, they've been always doing this garbage.
I do think it's funny, by the way, that you brought up former Prince Andrew being at the premiere, because I also do think that's a funny comparison when Octopussy had Prince Charles and Princess Diana in
It feels somewhat fitting.
Exactly.
Feels correct.
That being said, the reviews, well, they were shockingly positive, with many reviews cheering on the return of Connery. David Robinson of The Times said that, quote, Connery is back, looking hardly a day older or thicker, which is a bit kind. While Derek Malcolm in The Guardian wrote the film contains, quote, the best Bond in the business. Janet Maslin, writing in the New York Times, stated, quote, in Never Say Never Again, the formula is broadened to accommodate an older, seasoned man of much greater stature, and Mr. Connery expertly fits the bill. More current reviews have been much more mixed, often citing the cheapness and the pace of the film as being among the top of the film's problems, but more importantly, a lot of reviewers have pointed out the strangeness of the film even existing at all.
I get it. This is very also Moonraker reviews, because remember, Moonraker got good reviews and made a lot of money.
Yeah.
I think
And now it's just it's a failure. And it's is it though? Is it? It's not.
Roger Moore was by Octopussy. I think a lot of people were saying, why is Roger Moore still making Bond films? Again, I love
Roger Moore amongst them.
Yeah, I love Roger Moore. Don't get me wrong, but you're getting. I can't even remember. He had done Moonraker. He had done For Your Eyes Only. It's it was two really old Bonds. Again, it's that weird thing, that the idea that the top British agent is somebody in their 50s, pushing 60, kind of magical reality of that whole thing.
Before we get out of the production section, let's talk about the name of the movie. They were never going to call this movie Thunderball again. And Eon kept them from calling it James Bond on the Secret Service, as previously mentioned, and Warhead was also jettisoned as the title. So what to do? Enter Micheline Roquenbrun, Sean Connery's second wife, who suggested the title Never Say Never Again in reference to Connery's vow to never play the role again after Diamonds Are Forever. She even receives a credit for this at the end of the film. Good for her. Get that bag.
It was my wife that came up with it. She came up with Never Say Never Again. And then after hearing it a couple of times, then she's saying, and you did say you'd never do it again, and here you're doing it, and what have you. And there is no question that it worked, and it works so well in the French, jamais plus jamais, and in Italy it's mai diri mai, you know.
I think it's a wonderfully Bondian title, but like there's a real shoehorned in reference at the very end of the film where they quote
Yeah.
it. But why is it called that? I think it's a much better title than Warhead and all those other titles.
Yeah, it sounds more James Bond-y in that.
Mm.
But I love that she's credited in that because it's just
Yeah.
a joke. It's like how Mamrie Hart, the comedian YouTuber, is credited in the Joan Rivers documentary for the title because she's like, piece of work.
Yeah.
Non-union writers don't get a credit, but she does.
But she does.
Is she part of the union? I don't know.
Hey, honestly, it's a fun historical thing because his previous wife was a double on Thunderball. And so when it comes to Connery's wives, they all got to be involved in the Thunderball movie some way, shape, or form. Schwartzman had announced that this movie would be the start of a new James Bond series, and McClory even announced that the next film would be titled Spectre and star a returning Sean Connery. However, Connery announced 3 weeks before Schwartzman would have had to renew the rights for the sequel that he would never do another movie with Schwartzman again, and the option passed and a sequel was never made.
Yeah, I've been involved in this for 2 years, and I don't think I'll do another Bond. But I really think that they should make a 35-year-old young, kind of good actor, different, like some like this, what's his name, Mel Gibson, that sort of actor who can do that. That's what they want to find, I think.
A new James Bond, a younger James Bond.
Yeah, definitely. And Roger and I will play M and show him the ropes and all that nonsense.
So since McClory got his film, but not his own James Bond series, you think that might sate him and end his quest for his own Bond series. But that was not the case. And therefore, you will hear the rest of McClory's story in a later episode. Dun, dun, dun! You thought you were done with him, Chels, didn't you?
You know, always hoping that'll be done with a man, but no.
It was clearly the last time Sean was going to be wooed back, but Kevin loomed for decades.
Maybe when you've done all the Bond films, you should edit the McClory story together as like as a documentary, because I've said this earlier, he just didn't have to make a Bond film. You know, he won his court case, and he could have done anything, but he just needed to prove that he made this. I mean, the problem with this film, I think, it could have been an entirely different tone of Bond film. You know, it could have been anything else. But its big flaw is that it tries to do a lot of the Ian films sort of stuff with a song, as you say, with like crazy stunts, all that stuff which isn't actually in the books.
Yeah.
It could, I think the flaw, the mortal wound of this film series that Terry McClory was trying to do is that it was just a little bit too uncanny valley. It's just a little bit too similar to the Eon films.
Well,
maybe it would have been better if it went much more serious.
That's sort of what I wanted to get into before we actually get into the plot. And I know we're probably going a little long on this episode, but I just think this movie is so fascinating, is that it really only exists due to the egos of men. And I don't want to...
Oh, those guys, those men.
Those men! And I don't want to... we joke a lot on this show about Kevin McClory kind of being a boogeyman who haunts this franchise. And I don't want really people to leave feeling that way in the like he is not fully responsible here, because the start of this is the ego of Ian Fleming. And then McClory's inability to let his own ego die, to let it go, and the egos of the people making the Eon Bond film series to decide, because this man won't leave them alone, because he's being, for lack of a better term, so annoying about who created Bond and getting to do the Bond films, they also become vicious. This is for being such a macho film series, for being such a straight-coded thing, for being, you know, like toxic masculinity, this is the cattiest fucking thing. And like it's literally, you could have a Alexis Carrington Crystal fight in a fountain from Dynasty that would be less gay and less catty than this. And so I just think it's so fascinating that this all comes from men just not being able to let it fucking go. I get it. Everybody wants credit, but guys, like,
To the
is it
point
worth
that
it?
you don't get more movies because the ego and audacity of one man who wanted to be in charge turned everybody off and made it a horrible experience that they're like, we're not doing this again.
Yeah. And again, I don't want to give the impression that I think Kevin McClory is the devil at all. I have huge amount of empathy because this sort of thing had never happened before. There's no, like, no one owns the rights to Sherlock Holmes or Dracula or something. And if you like I think he genuinely was crucial in creating the cinematic interpretation of James Bond. Yes, he didn't write the script. He's viewed very much as an ideas man, but he can't do things. He's very charming. He's very good at getting people on board. He was definitely, without him, there would be no cinematic version of James Bond. Full stop. And if I was in his shoes, and then his films become like mega popular, like Goldfinger's come out, like Bond mania has exploded. I can't lie. I feel like I would want my piece of that pie, and there's definitely a part of you would be like, I need people to know that I made James Bond, like this legendary character. But yeah, that's the tragedy. I feel it's like Shakespearean. Like he is the creator of his own demise. He could have done anything with his life. He could have been a successful film producer using the capital he got from these lawsuits. And look, he was an executive producer. No, he was the full producer of Thunderball. He's made his money, but he had to let people know. And I think it's tragic. So I have so much sympathy. But also let's not forget Jack Whittaker, he gets completely nothing.
Yeah. And I do agree. Like, if there is somebody that you should, if you want to feel bad for somebody at the end of this, it is Jack Whittingham, who did deserve more than he got and got kind of really fucked over for a lot of the things that happened. And I will say, as much as I dog on him a lot because he is kind of a sexist jerk, the one person whose ego allowed him multiple times to get out of this was Connery. And like, I know he is involved in this film, and part of that was the promise of having more creative control and actually getting paid for what he was worth, which was, as we mentioned during his tenure as Bond, a huge problem that he was never getting raises, even though he was clearly contributing to the character. I think that he was the one who was smart enough to be like, guys, I can't be a pawn in this anymore. I gotta stop. Like, you can keep fighting it. You can keep doing your thing. I say that now, knowing actually that he does, spoiler alert for something in the future, Chels, which I know you will forget before we get to it. He does come back into contention for something else later on, and I will tell you about it when we get to it.
Oh boy.
We'll always have the Avengers starring Ray Fiennes, Uma Thurman, and Connery, which I saw in the cinema.
I did
Behind me were like 6 very confused ladies who are obviously old ladies who are fans of the original, and they're like, I think they walked out when the teddy bear scene appeared, and Connery is talking to a room full of people dressed as teddy bears.
Okay, 2 things, and maybe we should do the Avengers, Chels, at some point, because
you need to do the Avengers, I think.
I grew up, my dad was a very weird gentleman. He's no longer with us, but he like raised me on a lot of the shows. Like, I watched a lot of nighttime soap operas with my mom, and with him in the mornings before I would go to school, I'd watch a lot of like 1960s spy TV shows. I don't know why. It's just things that he liked as a kid. So there was a lot of the Avengers. So when the movie The Avengers came out, we went to see it, and he was, first of all, Harry, he was so disappointed. But I think, weirdly enough,
surprise.
I know, shocking. I think weirdly enough, a lot of the stuff that people are like, oh my God, no, like the teddy bears, is weirdly in the spirit of the TV show.
Yes.
And I know I don't know what it is about.
So what you're saying is we should do some Avengers TV episodes, and
I'd be down for it.
They got a lot of Bond girls came out of the Avengers. Is it
Yeah.
Diana Rigg is in there? There's one where she's dressed with like
Honor Blackman.
Honor Blackman.
I remember
Diana
things.
Rigg, Diana Rigg's got like, what is it, a studded choker? It's very like BDSM.
The Hellfire Club episode.
Ooh, good for her.
Trust me, I've seen it. Okay, then let's dust off the dossier for Never Say Never Again and get to the plot elements.
I like how it's dossier, it's dusty. It's sort of a place no one likes to watch this film very much.
Yeah, exactly. It's
This
hidden in
Spy
it-
Love Me dossier, nice and fresh. Crisp.
Exactly. That one was glossy, man. For legal reasons, we start not with a gun barrel, but with what looks like a screen window. And as it comes towards us, each perforated hole of that screen is revealed to be the shape of 007. As we pass through it to the sultry sounds of Never Say Never.
Numbers 007, not like loads of Connerys flying on the screen.
Yes, specifically the numbers 007. Sorry, I should say. That would actually be sort of like the old Doctor Who openings that had his face in it. Like just a bunch of Connerys. We pass through it to the sultry sounds of Never Say Never Again, which frankly sounds like softcore porn music.
It really threw me off, I'm not gonna lie. Oh boy.
It's nuts. It was originally going to be like a stopwatch sound effect. Apparently the
Yes.
writers were like, it's got a stopwatch sound effect. But now we've got this action sequence where Bond's like Rambo's an entire training facility.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like we finally stop on Rambo, Sean Connery, older and wiser, running through the jungle and systematically taking out the Spanish-speaking armed guards at a fortified house in the middle of the woods. Sure, I genuinely thought this was Rambo.
Until we find out this is a training session. It's just, as you say, softcore porn music. I just never seen an action sequence like this. Like I might see it in if he was like listening to a cassette tape, like ironically, that would be acceptable question mark. But
That's
And
the
it goes
Edgar
on
Wright
for a
version.
while because like as he makes his way through and he's like ziplining and blow darting some guys, he finally crashes into a bedroom to liberate a woman tied to a bed, of course. He cuts her free only for her to stab him in the side, ending his mission. Which I did like that little twist that leads us into it being a training session. I thought it was very fun. But this, it goes on for a while. Like, I'm like, oh, okay.
But then they say it took 1 minute 47 seconds. So like, how long is this
like-
training session? When
Yeah.
did they start timing it? And this, I know it's a film. When you're watching it, you're supposed to think this is really happening. But I get all these questions when I know it's a training session. Like, does Bond use like pretend blow darts to like zip us on in the neck? He actually strangled someone at one point. And if I was like the guy being strangled, I would be totally like, no, I've got really thick neck training. I know how to protect my neck. It's like playing in the playground because Bond is like shooting some guy and the guy's like, no, you didn't. You missed me. You missed me. There's a bit where they're playing chess. Two henchmen are playing chess. Like, how long have they been playing chess until Bond arrives? Like, do
Harry,
they
that's
know
their
when he's
fifth game.
coming? Yeah. Do they even know how to play chess? Who knows?
It's funny that you bring up the ticking clock thing too, because I guess the original edit was also set to the ticking clock, and Connery was very pleased with the way that looked, and then they replaced it with the song, and
And the
yeah,
song's-
it sucks all the tension out of it.
When the film was about 8 weeks into shooting in the Bahamas, the crew were kind of not madly happy, and to bolster their morale, they showed them about 35 to 40 minutes of cut footage, including the opening sequence, which at the time was fantastic. It was just Bond, racing through, and you think it's a real action adventure, and then you discover it's a training exercise. But it was all done to a ticking stopwatch. And it really worked. Later, in I think one of the worst decisions in post-production history, they put a song over it.
It was so counterproductive to what we'd gone for, which was, as Dick said, an action sequence with a ticking clock. We do this, and then over as a love song, never say never again. And we thought that was absurd. And of course, obviously, it's still there.
The socks. The song is only there because the Eon films do it. Like, they could have not done that and out of the gate decided we are different from then. But no, they have their own cheap version of the gun barrel. They have their own cheap version of a Bond song. Like, out of the gate, they're saying, we are doing our best, but it's just not good enough.
100% agree. Smash cut to an office where we meet our new M, who is reviewing the footage of James Bond's failure. It's revealed that it was a training exercise and 007 has failed it. Bond reminds M that he's been playing these war games for 2 weeks and only died once. M, unimpressed, reminds him that he stepped on a landmine in an earlier fake mission. Bond reminds this new M that he is underutilizing the 00 agents and that he has had to spend more time teaching of late than in the field. M posits that what Bond needs is a detox to get rid of the, quote, free radicals in his body. Bond exits M's office and we meet Miss Moneypenny, and when he tells her he is to eliminate all free radicals, she worriedly tells him to be careful.
Have you got an assignment, James?
Yes. Yes, Moneypenny. I'm to eliminate all free radicals.
Oh. Do be careful.
This is a joke that doesn't work for me. I just because like the joke is that she should know what that means and doesn't, and therefore is stupid. And no, she, of course, why would she know what that meant? Like,
And like
gonna say-
radicals being red meat and white bread and
Right.
like liquor and stuff. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
But I'm not sure what he means by the free radical stuff. Maybe that's just me. I mean, there's a line where he's told that he eats too much red meat and white bread and booze, and Bond is like, I'll cut out the white bread then, which is kind of funny. I
That
don't
is
get
funny.
why M is constantly shouting in this movie. Like, he just talks at everyone. It's like, you must go and get yourself cleaned up, Bond. And then later on the film, he's down the phone. He's just shouting down the telephone. It's Edward Fox. Like, everyone's a little bit different. I think only one recasting kind of pays off, like Algernon/Q, but we'll get to him.
Yeah. And that was one of the things they said, is that they wanted like a particularly younger M who's a little bit more of a technocrat than the ones presented in the film. But I also think it's funny because they're like, oh yes, a younger M. He's younger by what, like 5 years? Like that. It's not exactly like spring chicken M. It's, you know.
No, he's just grumpy. Bond in a classic Bentley pulls up to Shrublands Health Clinic. This whole sequence, where they make quick work of analyzing him for treatment. Meanwhile, a gorgeous woman in an elaborate fur throw visits a bank and asks to be let into the safety deposit box vault. From there, she enters through a secret passage after having a full body scan into a beautiful room full of other baddies. Sure. Whatever, man. This is the Spectre annual meeting, being led by Ernst Stavros Blofeld, cuddling his gorgeous white cat. I'm going to name that cat Bosco. Blofeld explains that his number one, Maximilian Largo, is in charge of their current mission and that Largo has got an Air Force member hooked on heroin so they could perform a surgery that makes his eyes, retina print an exact replica of the President of the United States. Okay. Largo explains that Captain Jack Patachi, I think.
Perfect.
Look at me go. He's an Air Force pilot, and he will convalesce at Shrublands in London, and that the woman we followed into the meeting goes by the number 12, and she'll be taking care of him personally.
I see no fault with this plan, hiring a heroin addict to get the president's eye implanted into him to access warheads at a British base. Like the idea of the
Sure.
president flying over to unlock, it seems kind of inconvenient. We need to get the president over to Britain right now to unlock this nuke.
Let's get this retina eye on an Air Force pilot.
Get the president's retina scan in the first place. I
Right.
feel that is the more interesting film.
And also on top of all of that, this is in place of the plastic surgery plot from Thunderball, where they've gotten a person to look like another person, which actually feels more realistic than doing surgery to change the retina of somebody's eye.
Yeah.
And also, eye retinas actually change over time, which is something that people like, you have to do routine scans in order to maintain the eye retina thing.
I will
Yeah.
say this film does streamline a few aspects, and I really appreciate it. I mean, there's so much underwater stuff in Thunderball, and it feels like this film does everything it can to avoid entering the water at all. Like, we're
They learn how
done.
to like film underwater just for Thunderball, and they're like, we're not wasting 1 second of footage. This
Mm.
one, they're like, who cares about water? Fuck them sharks.
Very much the intention when they are filming the shots of this film.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Back at Shrublands, number 12 wheels Patachi quickly around, and Bond meets with his new female physical therapist, who he immediately hits on. In turn, she works him out to great discomfort. Later that evening, she joins him in his room, where he reveals his suitcase is filled with delights such as caviar, jam, quail eggs, foie gras, and vodka. All name brands, of course.
He has a problem.
He does have a problem.
I mean, I know it's fun. I know it's Bond. It's cute, but you didn't even bring a change of underwear. It's just booze, foie gras. I think doesn't it have to be chilled?
Yes,
And
I
obviously
was just gonna say that. What
I have
is the
questions about
refrigeration?
the suitcase. Did like some sort of like cooler brand sponsor this? Look up Igloo.
Like we all love Bonds. We know like he drinks far too much. Like anyone who lived like Bond in real life would be dead quite quickly.
Yeah.
But this is I would stage an intervention. I would like
And
I
it
would have
feels like that was the beginning of the film, was them staging an intervention and sending him to this little health clinic. They're like, here's your rehab.
Also at the clinic, Jack Patachi is going through withdrawal, however, and number 12 reminds him he is supposed to do as he is told, or else his sister Domino will be in great danger. Jack tries to fight back, but number 12, who I guess we should just start calling Fatima Blush, even though the movie has decided she doesn't need a name yet, beats the crap out of him. Bond, across the way, sees the scuffle from his window and decides to investigate. Peering through a window, he watches as Fatima examines Jack's eye and then produces a heroin needle from her garter, kissing Jack and promising to shoot him up if he can pass the eye exam. Foolishly, Bond triggers the shade on the window, causing it to go up and Jack to panic. Fatima hits the lights and spots 007 using some night vision goggles and decides to do nothing about it that night.
No, she's got to think about it for a minute.
Exactly.
Oh. The next day, Bond finds Jack's room empty, but hidden beneath the mattress, a pack of cigarettes and matches, and matches provide him with a clue. At the weight machine, Bond is attacked by a strong-looking henchman disguised as a janitor who traps him under the weight. Bond frees himself, but is no match for the man's strength. Bond breaks the man's nose with a door, and they fight through the complex unnoticed because everyone is watching boxing. And they fight through so many rooms before Bond is able to throw some of his own urine into the man's face, only for him to fall back and impale himself on several beakers, killing him.
Again, for the audience who may not have seen this film, there was an open jar of his own urine in like some sort of lab. They fight their way through. They go through a kitchen. There's a nice bit where some lady's a chef is cooking late at night, and she goes, "You lunatics," as they fight their way through the kitchen.
Does nothing other than that, though. Like,
no, again, as you rightly point out, what time of day is this? It's it's like the evening, but this place seems completely deserted. No one else is using the gym, and then they eventually end up where someone's just, I don't know, finished for the day, left a big jar of James Bond piss on the side, and Bond throws it in the face of the henchman, and he acts like it's sulfuric acid.
Yeah.
No, I don't like pee thrown in my face. It's never really happened, actually, not to my knowledge. But he acts like his skin's about to burn off. And I reiterate, Bond might actually have a problem. I think M's onto something. If your pee knocks a man unconscious to the point that he skewers himself on some glass on the side of the room, like, Bond, you need to just, is your urine clear when you pee? I think it's probably black.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That sample's definitely contaminated if it's just sitting there all day gathering dust with no lid.
So much about that. I will say this, for as weird as the whole pee thing is, the fact the place is deserted, this scene to me is the most like Eon Bond of all of it. Like, this is that, I'm like, this feels like a Sean Connery Bond film, and even feels a little more exciting than some of the stuff that they do in Shrublands in Thunderball. So, I can't fault it for that. It's a fun action sequence, but everything you've said is completely correct.
But it's also, I feel, categorically filler.
Yeah.
Like, I think another problem with Never Say Never Again, and where people were saying this when it came out, it's like, if you could remake any Bond film, why it would be better if they had to remake, Goldfinger or From Russia with Love. This is not a grade A Bond film to remake, or grade A Bond story. It's a bit of a shame. and you kind of have to do shrublands, especially like at the time when they were writing the script. There was a draft where they could only use dialogue in the book,
Yes.
Thunderball, just in case, because that's the only way you could guarantee you weren't going to be sued.
Yeah.
It's a bit nuts.
Eon, like I said earlier, was over their shoulder the entire time. They even tried, and I didn't put this in the notes just because it's like a weird footnote. Literally about a month before this was to be released, their final gambit was to sue to keep it from being released. And the judge basically said, like, much to a very different time than we are now, where you can just make an entire movie and then bury it for tax breaks. The judge literally said, they made the movie. Like, you can't just not release a made film. And so, I know.
I know.
R.I.P. Batgirl.
The one bit of the Zack Snyderverse I want to see.
Back at M's office, M rakes Bond over the coals for his behavior, and Bond reminds M that he was almost murdered while there. At a U.S. Air Force base, Jack uses his new magic eye to switch out dummy warheads meant for a test run with actual nuclear warheads, which are promptly loaded into a jet fighter and released. Jack drives away, only to be followed by Fatima Blush in another car. She yells congratulations at him before tossing a large snake into his car. He panics and immediately crashes. Fatima pulls over so she can save the snake and plant a bomb to make sure Jack is dead, triumphantly driving away.
I love the snake. Bring back the snake.
But like, she loves the snake. It's her baby. She's oh, my baby, my
Just giving
darling.
it kisses.
I mean,
it's like, oh, baby, you're okay.
It's like you have like a few, 3 dogs, Chels? Is it? Imagine if you threw one of those dogs into a car, so that it would crash, and then you take
Bosco could do it. Bosco
Okay, makes sense. It looks like an accident. What's that snake prints?
Bosco, can you do it? Are you a secret agent? You're an assassin?
Loki, I'm a massive fan of Dogs and Cats and Dogs film franchise, especially the sequel. It's really good. I'm not joking. Roger Moore's in one of them, I think.
It's
Check
true.
it out. That's another one for the podcast.
The missiles finally reach their target, the middle of the ocean, where they are intercepted by Largo's frogmen. Welcome back, frogmen. I love the frogmen. Where they're loaded onto a fishing boat. Back at Spectre Base, Blofeld records his ransom video threatening to use 2 nuclear missiles if his demands for 25% of each country's oil spending isn't delivered to him. The Minister of Defense immediately implores M to reactivate the 00 program.
But M does this video with the camera pointed squarely at his cat. So it's really like his cat is addressing NATO. I can imagine one guy saying, "This cat is going to destroy the world."
People will pay attention more to animals than humans.
That's true. It does keep cutting back to NATO going, "Oh."
Like, I'm watching cat videos on YouTube, and half of them is getting them scared of cucumbers, and the other half is them demanding the oil money from several nations. Those crazy cats.
I do like the difference 20 years makes, though, because Thunderball is famously where Blofeld demands $1 million or something like $2 million. So not a huge sum. And here it's 25% of everybody's oil intake.
He goes to full Dr. Evil territory.
Yeah.
I mean, again, Max von Sydow, incredible actor. A lot of his scenes were on the cutting room floor. And again, I know you created Blofeld and Spectre and all that jazz, but just having him in a large room, like a large ornate room, when the other scene is the one of Thunderball, and I'm actually not a huge fan of Thunderball, but is it a Ken Adams, that set?
Yeah,
it really is. Incredible set where all those Spectre agents are around a table and one gets burnt or electrocuted in his chair. It's just a beautiful set. This just is in a lovely room, but it looks cheap and boring.
Yes.
The carpet looks threadbare. He's speaking into a camera which comes out of a silver skull. Now that's incredibly camp. I love it. Why would you do that? But it still just seems weird and cheap.
I also wanted more of him in the movie.
Yeah. Why would
he
he?
that much?
I mean, it was done for time, I'm sure, but it just seems ridiculous that you would cut Blofeld out, considering that's part of the reason these films even exist.
Right. No, I completely agree. And also, even just the first time you see that room when Fatima Blush enters and it does the close-up on the skull feels like the cheapest way to do it, by being like, oh, these are the baddies. Like, ooh.
I do enjoy watching this film, but it's missing the sort of seasoning that you get with Eon. With Eon, you get John Barry's score, you get the great cinematography, you get great Peter Hunt editing. I feel this has the meat and potatoes of a Bond film, but it's missing all that seasoning
Yeah.
and the sauce that makes an Eon Bond film. Even though I feel this film has every right to exist, it's just
Yes.
missing the sauce.
Moneypenny finds Bond brushing up on some history of Maximilian Largo and delights in telling him he's reactivated. M informs Bond that Largo is targeting the world's oil supplies in the Middle East. Bond posits that the missing Air Force man, Jack Patachi, could have used a false eye to steal the missiles. M wants a less far-fetched theory. Largo, aboard his super yacht, is seemingly going over missile schematics when he pushes a button revealing a double mirror where he can watch a young woman do a dance lesson, only to interrupt the lesson where she immediately runs into his arms. He gives her a necklace called the Tears of Allah and claiming it is the most valuable thing he's ever possessed except her. Clearly an important plot detail. When she asks if he was ever to leave him, he drops the facade and tells her he will cut her throat, blows her a kiss, and leaves. Two things I just want to point out here. The leap from Blofeld to instantly knowing Maximilian Largo is the villain of the film is like just not in the script. It just happens. And two, the young blonde woman I didn't mention that's Domino, and that is Kim Basinger, and she will come back in. I really like his performance here. I think he's actually one of the better Bond villains of this era, Maximilian Largo, and the way that he's played. And I love how like he seems charming, and then he's like, and then I'll cut your throat, and it's like, oh no.
And you trust me to wear it?
A safer place than around your neck, I couldn't imagine.
And what if I ever leave you? No, really.
Then I cut your throat.
I feel sorry for like comparing this so much, but you kind of have to do it. I think Largo looks like an iconic Bond villain with the eye patch and things, but he's actually kind of not such a great or interesting villain.
Yeah.
This guy, you don't know what he's going to do. And I feel like he just feels really unpredictable and kind of scary. He does feel like an actual psychopath. And it's not often that the Bond villains seem to be younger than Bond, but he's just a little bit younger.
Yeah.
You know, he would be like a modern day tech bro, I suppose. He has that energy, let's say. But speaking of which, do you know the boat this is set on, the yacht, used to be called the Trump Princess?
Oh dear.
No, I did not.
It was, so it's had many different owners. The short story is at one point Donald Trump did own this boat, and obviously in keeping with Donald Trump, he christened it the Trump Princess. It was an enormous boat in which the film was shot on because it had its own helipad, amongst other things.
No, I do think that this villain, he gives maybe my favorite performance in the movie. And like this guy, he is like a good actor director. He like is an Out of Africa nominated for that for the Oscar and stuff. But
Yeah.
I do think he has that like you can see where he's charming, but he does have that psycho edge to him. And I wish we would have had more of him almost. Like
Yeah.
we get a lot of him, but I'm like, oh, I like what he's doing. He could have been a great recurring villain.
I think that's the lesson of this movie in terms of all the villains, because as you mentioned earlier, the Max von Sydow, like we could have used more of him, and then Fatima Blush gets killed far too early in this film for my taste. But
And
that's,
she's wild and I love her.
We'll get to it, but yeah, I thought about how he could have moved her death. And again, not saying he's a terribly well written villain. It's just it's a performance. I think the actor, what was his name again?
Klaus Maria Brandauer.
He is doing so much work to try and make his character work, but there is a point where he captures Bond on his boat and he just says to Bond, "Yeah, just do what you want." And then, like almost immediately, Bond causes alarms to go off and starts scuppering his mission. It's like, dude, you could
Yeah.
at least put him in the brig or something.
So funny. While Bond is doing some target practice, Q shows off a projectile exploding pen. Q, who Bond calls Algernon and sounding like Michael Caine, complains of the Thatcher-era budget cuts hindering this version of the Q division. love that. He arms Bond with a laser watch and laments missing the old days and hopes Bond will bring back gratuitous sex and violence.
Things have been awfully dull round here. Bureaucrats running the old place, everything done by the book. Can't make a decision unless the computer gives you the go-ahead. Now you're on this. I hope we're going to have some gratuitous sex and violence.
I certainly hope so too.
So I think that's a really underutilized thread. It'd been so good if Bond just didn't have infinite budget and he had to do things on the fly. But it's also kind of weird how apparently like the gadget makers in MI5 are aware of how much Bond fucks around. It's just kind of, he's got like his legendary libido. I don't know. Maybe
No,
he's done
it's true.
special Q branch condoms or something, if Bond uses them, which I doubt.
I doubt. Yeah, that's actually. Oh boy.
That's actually another gadget, is just him not impregnating the world.
Yeah, exactly. Secretly sterilized.
Yep.
Bond, now in the Bahamas, wastes no time getting his flirt on, only to be interrupted by Nigel Smallfaucet from the British Embassy. Nigel fills Bond in on Largo, including his altruistic donations, and Nigel is worried about Bond disrupting things for the tourism industry here. Later, Bond asks a bartender about the yacht, the Flying Saucer, while scoping out and getting splashed by Fatima doing what appears to be water skiing ballet. She crashes up the bar and lands in Bond's arms. "How clumsy of me. I've made you all wet," she exclaims. "Well, yes, but my martini's still dry," he replies. Connery still very much has it.
James and Fatima introduce themselves, and she lays it on thick, offering to show James what he's looking for. At sea, Bond disrobes to put on a wetsuit, and the dialogue in this scene is classic Bond. They make love below deck, possibly several times before taking their dive. When I say that this is a sequence, it goes as long as the water sequences in
Yeah.
Thunderball. It just keeps going. They
There's
just
several fades to show you time is passing. And
so much
my
time.
favorite shot is, and it just reminds me, like, I am not a Friends fan, but there's one Friends joke that I remember when I was a kid, which is Rachel telling Chandler and Joey she had a sex dream about them. And they're like, "Oh my God." And like when she sees they're really into it, she's like, there were times I wasn't even there. And then they're like immediately repulsed. That's what this reminds me of, because there's a shot where you're not seeing Connery, which I understand the implication is that he's either fucking her out of frame, going down on her, but it just feels like it's like,
I don't think Connery's Bond ever went down on anyone.
that's actually very true. But it's literally just like her fucking Bond, her pleasuring herself,
Yeah.
her
On the
fucking Bond some
cold
more.
steel floor of
Yeah,
the
Yep.
boat, just down there on the ropes, like salty heterosex. It's
Exactly.
the
Oh my
hottest
goodness.
PG sex I've seen.
Meanwhile, during like all this, somehow Fatima places a tracker on Bond's air tank as they explore the wreck of a ship. Fatima swims away as Bond is confronted by a remote-controlled shark keyed into his tracker. Again, a 5-year-old had to have written this.
Bond films must have one of two things. It must have sharks or it must have a train sequence. So it's not like, without those two, it doesn't feel like a Bond film.
Yeah.
I watched this whole sequence. So Bond is like harassed by sharks in this sunken boat. You can't hear the beeping tracker on the back of his tank until he sees it, obviously, because this is a film. But I was wondering the whole time if these were animatronic sharks, but they look really realistic. But no, they were like real sharks which had been held in place. This film has real animal cruelty vibes. You thought Thunderball was bad when they were shooting sharks. This one, they are holding sharks in place, and sharks need to move to keep breathing. They held them
Yes.
until they were dopey, and then just sort of threw them at the direction of the stuntman.
I was gonna say, had to be a stuntman because, like, Sean Connery, scared of sharks from Thunderball,
Yep.
did not
And
realize that
also-
they were like, boom, we'll get
Also,
you.
when filming the sequence, they had to throw away so much footage because they sent photos of Connery to say, find a stuntman
Yes.
which looks like this. And unfortunately, they sent photos of Thunderball Connery. So
Right.
he was wearing a totally different outfit and also was 20 years younger. And so he just looked he had to just throw all this stuff away.
Again, this movie is a comedy. Like, he's
Mhm.
fighting sharks. He's somehow keeping them away. He locks a shark out of a room, Sure, in the sunken vessel, repeatedly hitting the shark in the face with a door. Okay, like
That's the part that made me cackle. That it is pure comedy because it's literally like just hitting the shark in the face with the door to keep it out of the
this
room.
is not a Roger Moore movie, by the way.
Mm.
However, the chase continues when the shark breaks in, but Bond is able to trap it under a falling mast. Sure. Seeing the tech on the shark's fin, he realizes he's been set up, but not before another shark knocks his oxygen tank out. He's able to ditch the tracker and make his way back to the surface, only to run into the Fisher lady he hit on when he first arrived.
What luck.
And she was also in Spy Love Me. I think she played a receptionist. So she's one of the
Yes.
few like former Eon people who's like, I need the money.
Get you a girl who can do both.
There's a Bond, and Bond decides to borrow her dungarees.
Yes.
He
Oh,
looks
we're-
so silly in his little farmer dungarees.
We're gonna get to it.
I presume he's naked under his dungarees. And I just think like wet denim is just it chafes quite a bit. I know this somehow.
The famously, and I think it's actually mentioned in the Battle for Bond book, one of the designers on the original James Bond series went to take his wife to see From Russia with Love, and while they were waiting for tickets in line, brought up the fact that Sean Connery never wears underwear because it would ruin the line in his suit, and he suddenly realized everybody in line was like now listening to his conversation once he said that. So yes, I guarantee Connery was not in fact wearing underwear underneath that.
Oh yeah.
Some say command to Bond, but he's really a commando Bond.
Yes, absolutely. Back on shore, Fatima celebrates her success before realizing James has survived. She retreats to his hotel, dancing up the stairs, and places a bomb under Bond's bed. Bond, now dressed in only overalls, escorts his Fisher friend back to his room. They make love only for Bond to be interrupted by a call from Nigel. Nigel tells Bond Largo is headed to the south of France, just as Fatima triggers the bomb. However, Bond is in his paramour's bed across the way, not his room. Tough luck, Fatima.
So what did he phone? Like every phone number in the entire
Yes,
island?
I thought the same thing.
How does he know the number for his paramour? I mean, maybe he could just phone every female kind of person on the island, every lady on the island. That cuts it down by half, I suppose.
Exactly.
Gets them eventually.
Two things, and here's maybe where we can actually talk about Fatima because she's had way more of a presence at this point in the film now. I love Barbara Carrera's interpretation of this. I love her like swing for the fences version of this character. She is to me maybe one of the most memorable James Bond henchmen in all of the any James Bond films. And I also think, like I said, this film alters the course of the actual James Bond movies as well too, because I think they not only take the idea of making the James Bond more action centric post this movie for the Eon productions, but I don't think Mayday, who you've not met yet, Chels, would exist without Barbara Carrera's performance as Fatima Blush. And so I think there's some really interesting reverberations from this film in the Eon series.
I can see that.
You're marvelously well equipped.
Thank you, James. So are you.
Thank you. What exactly are we going down for?
Sport. And a little fun.
You appear tense.
You affect me, James.
Well, that's bad. Going down, one should always be relaxed.
I think I feel in almost every regard, this film doesn't quite meet the standard of the Eon films, but I think Fatima is 100% a full-blown Bond girl / villainess / henchwoman. She's right up there with like the Major from Russia with Love. I forget her name for a moment, but she is so out there. I love her so much, and the only I mean, I've watched this film far more times than I intend to do thanks to this podcast now. As I said earlier, I didn't have it in my DVD collection, so I kind of had to buy it on so I could watch it, which again, it had an excuse to buy it, so I appreciate that. I think the only reason I'd watch it again is just for her out there performance. And yeah, when she does leave the film, I think the film takes a real dive, unfortunately.
I agree.
Yeah,
She's
she
so
brings a
good.
lot of really great, silly energy. She earned that Golden Globe nomination.
She was robbed.
Take that, Cher.
Yeah, Cher, you got enough awards already, Cher.
And
Why
one
Cher and
last
Cher alike, why don't you?
And one last thing I do want to mention just before we move out of this section, because we're about to leave the Bahamas. The last time James Bond was really in the Bahamas, like in the films, is Dr. No. And I think what's interesting about that is that at the time, the Bahamas was under British rule when that movie was made. In fact, it was just getting its freedom around that era. And I think Dr. No does a really awful job at presenting the Bahamas in the way that they actually are. There are basically very few characters of color in that version unless they're like on the street and whatnot. I think this does a better job, but I think it's very funny that Rowan Atkinson's character is so hardcore about the tourism because there is
Yes.
still that British element involved in the Bahamas there. And I think that is actually like funny commentary of them moving from empire to owning from owning the Bahamas to being kind of just like, well, we can still make money off of this somehow.
Yeah. Also, he has looked the same forever. The
Yeah,
exact
truly.
same. His face has never changed.
And
Wrinkles
he
and
was
all.
and he was quite young when he did this movie.
Yeah, like I was messaging a friend about that I was watching. He's like, "Oh my gosh, he was like 28 when he made this. It's one of the first couple things he did." And I'm like, "Wow, he looks exactly the same." Don't know what that says about his skincare.
He's definitely, again, it's certain that just for shits and giggles, for guffawing. But again, he's good. Like even a small bit of Rowan Atkinson goes a long way.
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to Man vs. Baby on Netflix. Are you?
Of course, we all are.
Bond flies to France where his French contact Nicole meets him, delivering a package from Q. They run into CIA agent Felix Leiter. The trio leave the airport together, and Bond spies Domino dancing on the flying saucer from the beautiful villa they are staying at. Sorry, when you say flying saucer, it reminds me of the like flying saucer scene in what was that? Is it the Casino Royale?
That's the Casino Royale, which is
Yeah.
we haven't mentioned really because that is the other time that there has been a non.
Yeah.
But much like you were saying, Harry, they tried something different with that, and obviously it failed. But like that is the only other time that there has been like a non-official James Bond movie, and it's such
crazy.
a mess.
It's crazy it's happened twice,
Yeah.
I don't think many people are clamoring for Casino Royale to be in their official box set of all the Blu-rays, though. This feels at least trying to be a Bond film. But have we said that the flying saucer is the name of the boat?
Yes, it's the name of.
It's not. She's not just there like with ET. So
She could be though.
Yeah,
If she
could
believes.
absolutely phone home and leave with ET. Let's say that's what's happened. She left. She died on her way to her home planet like Poochie the dog.
Yeah, yes, the Disco Volante, the flying saucer, is the yacht. It's just
Yes.
The Trump princess, as it's now known.
Yes.
Ugh. Felix makes the connection that Domino is Air Force Jack's sister. Bond follows her to shore, sneaking into the spa Domino has retreated to, where he pumps her for information about Largo while pretending to be her masseuse. This is the creepy part.
Yep.
She informs Bond that Largo is throwing a children's charity ball that very evening, and Bond leaves just as the real masseuse arrives, blowing his cover. Domino smiles to herself, content in the fact that she was just felt up by a stranger. And when we say felt up, he's fully rearranging her hands, like going under the towel. It is full creep. He should be on a predator list.
There's so much about this series of scenes that I hate, and part of it is the him being the like creepy masseuse, but also the literal part where the three of them are in a. Harry and I were just talking about this in the new Frankenstein movie, where a character's actually like, "You're the real monster, Dr. Frankenstein." There's like three characters who are like, "What if she is the sister of the guy they used to steal the missiles. And it's like, we've been watching the movie, guys. We know, like,
It is just awful. Like, he's fully above her head, like, going over her, basically just, like, thrusting into her face, and I'm like, "What are we No,
And
I hate
also,
this.
I just want to say, if this was gender flipped, if it was me and like a hot 52-year-old lady came and massaged my backside, I don't, I think it's a stranger just creeping in, just any stranger coming in and starting to touch me without
Yeah.
my consent is weird. Don't like it.
Very that. Very.
Luckily, Kim Basinger has so much more to do in this film.
Yeah, goodness. Bond arrives at the charity ball only to be immediately spotted by Fatima Blush, who sends her driver to follow Nicole back to the villa. Bond punches his way into the ball and makes his way to a smoky room where everyone is gambling, only to find Domino at one of the tables. He follows her through the room to an arcade and introduces himself, offering to buy her a drink. Fatima's ever-watchful eye alerts Largo to Bond's presence and warns him that Bond is the ultimate seducer and the ultimate killing machine.
I fucking hate these arcade machines so much. I am a video game fan. In fact, my podcast, Games on Film, where we celebrate video game movies, is all about movies based on video games. We have done a Bond episode, if you're interested, but geez Louise, it's such a shock to go from this smoky casino to the noise of 1980s arcade.
Yes.
Which is when Bond says his iconic line, the name's Bond, James Bond, he's like peeking around like a centipede arcade cabinet or something. I know it's a children's charity, but it just seems so wrong. And that's
This
before we
is
get to
very old
domination.
man does not understand culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess what it was too was just the fact that the producers were like, we have access to all these Atari gaming cabinets. Can we do something with them? And I get that what they're trying to do kind of, and obviously it's going to happen in the next scene, is bring Bond into the latter half of the 20th century and make it more about like, oh, who plays card games anymore? But like, this is not the way, folks.
I'm looking forward to the next Bond film where he's wearing like a Meta VR helmet or something and they're playing like virtual golf.
I mean, Miss Moneypenny already did it in Die Another Day. So
Oh, yes. True.
Bond questions Domino about her brother, but Largo interrupts them and challenges Bond to a video game called Domination. It's essentially Risk, but using lasers and nuclear bombs to blow up targets on a map for money. Rich people, you know what? Never change.
It's the most ornate sort of game. It's like looks like a pool table.
Yeah.
With like a it's just so bad. It's just two men waggling their joysticks for several minutes.
It's true.
And
Just like, honestly, get Jennifer Tilly in for a scene, have her play some poker and whoop his ass. It's fine.
now, again, the big in films, I've seen Casino Royale. I don't know how to play Texas Hold'em poker, but it's how it's filmed, how the emotions conveyed. But it's just two men sat there sweating, and all these sound effects it's just cack. It's total cack. But again, it's really insane. I kind of
is.
love it. Like,
The insane part is the catch of this game is like every hit causes the user pain. So the pain is increasing with little electroshocks coming through the handles with the amount of money, like as it rises. It's weird, but also I get it. Sure.
Largo's like, I designed this game and no one's beaten me. And it's like, yeah, I kind of get that. Like maybe he's kind
Yeah.
of like explaining the rules piecemeal throughout as well. I know it's the typical Bond villain thing of like they play to win. They're always like cheating. They're doing everything they can to get the advantage. But you know, it's just I could cut this whole scene out. Did you notice this film's nuts?
It is pretty nuts because like Largo bests Bond twice, and on the third try, the pain proves too much for Bond as he collapses, like fully out of the chair, people freaking out. But then Bond's like, I'm gonna challenge you. One more final game. Entire globe. Let's do this. Even though the pain level, it could kill me. Like,
Again, designing
but
a game which could kill you, like if you're playing Mario Kart and a blue shell totally just stops your heart. That's fun.
exactly. But you know what? It's okay. Bond gets the upper hand, and before the game can kill him, Largo lets go and begins to write Bond a check. Bond instead asks for a dance with Domino as payment instead. Domino seems genuinely worried about the psycho she loves. Same.
It is one of those funny things. She's truly concerned about Largo at this point, and it's like, okay, he was threatening to cut your throat.
It seems I underestimated you. $267,000.
I'll settle for one dance with Domino.
So, do you lose as gracefully as you win?
I wouldn't know. I've never lost.
This game has been played, and I have lost. That's it.
There's also ballet skiing. It's fine. He's a psycho, but there's ballet skiing.
I mean, so Picking Basinger, it must have sucked to go to the premiere and just see how much fun Fatima is having, and she gets nothing at all. I've got a good fondness for her because, of course, she was in Batman, and she's done some great stuff. But
I think she's great. Yeah.
She's got nothing to do in here apart from occasionally wear sort of sheer tops where you can see a bit of nipple.
On the dance floor, genuinely my favorite scene in the movie. Truly,
Yes.
that's Bond and Domino tango both physically and verbally as he tells her Jack was an employee of Largo and that he's dead. Watching them, Largo instructs Fatima to kill Bond, and she excitedly dances down the stairs. Largo then interrupts the dance. He invites Bond to lunch the next day, if he's still alive. Just a normal, everyday saying. Finally, Bond returns to the villa, only to find Nicole dead and Fatima's high heels running out the door, giggling. It's suddenly daytime. Truly, it's just suddenly daytime, and Bond unwraps his Q Division motorcycle to give chase. He rides it all throughout town, up and down stairs, as Fatima warns the other Largo lackeys who have joined the chase that they are not to touch him. He's hers to kill. They corral his bike into the back of a semi-truck, but he drives it back out and continues the chase, using several Q Division gadgets along the way, allowing him to jump cars and docks. Finally, Fatima leads him to a dead end, trapping him and knocking him off his bike. She gets him at gunpoint, making him throw his own away. As she prepares to shoot him in the penis, he promises that he will write that she's the best he ever had, using his Q Division pen. He fires the pen at her, but it fails to explode right away, leading to a tense few seconds till she goes up in flames, just leaving her high heels behind. R.I.P. Fatima.
Now write this. The greatest rapture in my life was afforded me in a boat in Nassau by Fatima Blush. Sign, James Bond, 007.
Just remembered, it's against service policy for agents to give out endorsements.
The fact that she leads him to this dead end, as you mentioned, then almost immediately Felix shows up, sort of implying that he's running around town following the sounds of motorbikes and explosions. How does he show up here? I don't know. Why does... I mean, she seals her fate by demanding Bond sign a contract to say that she was the best lay he ever had. And the contrivance, we often say Bond gadgets are designed really contrived. Like Q will show him, here's a gadget which will only get you out of this specific sequence later in the film. But this sort of takes the cake. And the fact that it's got a little Union Jack on it is the tackiest pen I've ever seen in my life.
That's a tourist, souvenir at an airport.
Yeah,
at best.
I'm sure it's like one of those pens where if you hold it a certain way, the dress falls off the lady.
Yes!
That's the sort of thing Bond would have.
My grandfather had one of those. Thank you. There's a lot of things to talk about here. I love the way she dances down the stairs, excited to kill Bond. I love the dance sequence.
You gotta love your job sometimes,
Truly,
Yeah.
and she is somebody who loves her job. The chase sequence suffers a little bit from the Roger Moore era of it has a genuine stopping point and then continues, but for some reason I don't mind it here. The corralling him into the back of the truck and then getting it out, but it does add to the cheapness of it because it doesn't feel like an exciting Bond thing to do to round him up into the back of a semi truck and then Also, I guess in the original script, the motorcycle was meant to fly, and it just kept getting more and more whittled down into cheaper and cheaper to finally it could just jump things.
They
Uh,
should have hired E.T.
They definitely put the stuff all over the bike to make it look different, but it just looks weird and cheap. It looks like a fairground
Yes.
motorcycle. It is like the only proper action sequence of the film, I think. There's some underwater fighting and there's some gunfire, but this is their one opportunity to do what the Eon films does. And I will say it's not a bad chase. There's a bike chase right in No Time to Die, which lasts about 15 seconds.
Yes.
This is okay. It's okay. But yeah, R.I.P. Fatima. I feel she just needed to be in the film longer. You could have had that sequence where she's demanding him sign the pen, like right at the end of the film. That would be a
Yes.
great little kind of, you could have had that almost be the final scene, you know? But no, she dies, and then there's like what, 30 minutes of the film left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if she'd been like a Winton kid and came back for the final
Mm.
sequence to kill him, and then, but I also listen. Every henchman has to die. This is such an extreme death, and we talked about it in our For Your Eyes Only episode on how the death of the Countess Lissel feels a little sexist or a little mean-spirited. This also feels mean-spirited because I get that
Mhm.
she's such an extreme character, but do we need her to fully explode? Like no
Like,
other
as
man
she's
in this movie.
demanding a man write down that she was the best sex he ever had.
Right.
It's a pretty wild. Like, I love her performance of it, but the material is questionable. I will
It's
say, if we back up though, I do think the tango is probably the best shot scene in
Yes.
the film.
You could tell
Um,
Kirshner was having fun.
Her
Yeah.
death is kind of contrived. I feel it is kind of part of her character, though. I think she is so like she lives to live. That doesn't know if it makes sense. She's just very.
No, that makes sense.
I would happily die that way, leaving a pair of flaming high heels in my wake. Like no other physical
But who's
evidence
gonna
of
take care of her snake now?
Yeah, true.
the snake she throws into cars.
I think people would be more confused if you died leaving only a pair of flaming high heels.
I would like to. I embrace the mystery. Just I don't know.
Felix arrive and they escape pretending to be a boxer and his coach. Sure. Later that day, the two scuba their way to the flying saucer, but only James makes it aboard, where he's informed that Largo has been waiting for him. Largo shows Bond around the ship, including his command center, where Bond curiously sees the phrase Tears of Allah on the screen. He gets dressed and finds Domino wearing a sheer, completely see-through top in her dance studio. Bond turns the music up so they will not be heard, much to a frustrated Largo, who's watching once again through his little two-way mirror. When he's like cranking up the volume, it is very funny. He's like, so mad. Domino tells him all about the Tears of Allah necklace and that they are headed to North Africa, and Bond explains to her that he's going to kiss her and they have to make it look good because Largo is watching. Largo tries to catch them in the act, but is too late.
It's funny how Bond knows how long it takes Largo to reach that room.
Yes.
There's a lot of like things. So Bond and Felix swim to this boat. Bond gets onto the boat and he's immediately caught. What was the actual plan? Like, there's a lot of Bond is very lucky that he's fully confident he's not going to be shot on sight. You know, what if he pokes his head out of the flap, the trap door? The henchman points a gun at him. Bond is halfway through saying, "Oh, hello," and then gets shot in the mouth.
Right.
I
Well,
don't
mean,
want to sound too.
that's
Go on,
every
sorry.
Bond interaction. There's so
Yeah.
many henchmen who could have killed Bond that don't, and
I don't want to sound too much like Scott Evil, but there's so many opportunities for Fatima to just shoot the guy. And they don't.
She loves her job too much.
Yeah, this is very like James Bond was bad at his job when it was OG Connery. Now it does feel like James Bond is like the only competent person in these, like to the point where M is the idiot underestimating him.
Right.
So
That's actually a very interesting point, Chels. Like this is maybe the fatal flaw of this movie is this is a Bond who's too good at his job, because even in the Roger Moore era, Bond is actually kind of bad at his job. He's much more of a know-it-all, but this is a Bond that maybe it's not even that he's too good at his job, but everything goes his way.
Exactly.
And again, it's just through the grace of God that Largo just allows him free reign of the entire bridge. There's you
Is this
know,
Mary Sue Bond?
Yes.
there's many sequences like in Goldfinger and Doctor No where the villain is like, "You are my guest," though you're effectively a prisoner. He's not even a prisoner here. He's like, "Have a go, have a go in my command center. Visit Domino." Just nuts. But
Yeah,
I
he's
think
just a tourist.
being insane explains a lot. Let's just say that Largo is insane. That helps.
The sheerness of like there are full nipples for a PG-13 movie. I'm like, we are just seeing all of Kim Basinger, which
We really are.
good for her. But I was like, wow, like I was like, no wonder these movies were like it seemed like the straightest thing in the world.
I would say it's very forward thinking and sex positive now, but not then.
No. Domino triggers the fire alarm so Bond can sneak into the control room and opens Largo's secret room that he does all his snooping from. Largo, figuring out he's been had, starts to tear the dance studio apart. Bond sends a message from the secret room to M about where the flying saucer is going and makes it back up to the deck with Domino, feigning innocence.
In North Africa, Largo shows off his estate, but becomes violent with Domino and tells Bond that the game is over and has him taken away. He tells Domino he forgives her for betraying him and forces her to kiss him as she says she hates him and calls him crazy.
Finally.
Right.
And then, in both one of the wildest plot twists in the movie and also pretty racist, Largo has Domino chained up to be sold to some Arab men.
Pretty is doing a lot of hard work there.
Yeah.
Incredibly racist.
Incredibly racist. Bond is also chained in a dungeon and gets Largo to villain monologue to tell him where the bombs are. One actually being at the White House itself. Bond, left alone, then uses his laser watch to free himself. Down below, Domino puts up a fight as Largo escapes by boat with the second nuclear bomb. Bond makes his way out of the fortress and stops the auction on horseback, rescuing Domino. They make their way further up the fortress, still on horseback, and jump off the side into the water, losing their clothes as the immortal horse somehow swims away. Felix rescues them from a speedboat as the fortress is fired upon by a U.S. submarine. Once again, that's a lot of plot, and we're very quickly running to the end of this film, but it's so much of that. Why does he have a medieval dungeon in his weird opulent estate? Why do they lose their clothes when they jump into the water? How does that horse survive?
They literally threw a horse into the sea.
Yeah.
It was on a an articulated lorry in some sort of, I don't know what to call it, but they made it so that the horse couldn't see the sea. But then something went wrong. They're meant to lift it gradually, and they just sort of tipped the horse and everyone over into the sea. But apparently something went wrong, and so the horse was fully aware that it was about to be tipped into the sea for some time, and eventually managed to get it in. But yeah, now that's why we have things at the end of films saying no animals are harmed in this film. I think this was literally the film. I read that somewhere. Might be wrong, but
Wow.
it was because of the shark tomfoolery and throwing horses into the sea. And yeah.
Yeah, you can't just do that to animals. You can't.
And yet they
No.
did. And this is all happening. So much happens in this end sequence, but this is where I feel like they needed to cut some stuff out, not just because of animal cruelty reasons, but this movie felt so long at this point. I was just like, okay, when are we getting to the end? This is where I was starting to get real tired.
There's no reason to do this whole castle sequence, really. It was just extra stuff. I mean, it contains one of only 3 times Bond kills a guy in this film. For his license to kill, I think he only kills 3 people in his entire sequence. Whenever there's an action sequence, the gun almost immediately gets shot out of his hand for some reason. And I don't know if we've really mentioned this, but the other bomb is going to be in an oil place. It's going to cause a chain reaction or something. It's not enough that the bomb is going to blow up a place. I think it's going to cause maybe almost worldwide damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that in a moment.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, the science bit. Concentrate. Here we go.
Yes, I'm a scientist. Aboard the sub, Bond and Domino share a shower, and M calls to tell Bond that they've cracked the code to stop the bombs, but only have 5 hours to find the second bomb. Bond and Felix discover that the Tears of Allah necklace is actually a map to an underground temple where Largo will place the second bomb. The temple is near a major oil field in Ethiopia. Largo and his men make their way there underwater, and Bond asks the CIA if they have a new doohickey he's not supposed to know about available. I love the word doohickey.
Somebody asked, how could we make the jetpack from Thunderball
Right.
200% more bullshit?
Make
Which
it
is
a
even
doohickey.
funnier because once again, the rocket pack is not from the book. Like this is just
Yeah.
another thing from the movie.
It's truly a cut to him and Felix using rockets and personal jet pads to land on Ethiopian oasis and then follow Largo and his goons underwater. It's silly. They really wanted jetpacks.
Also, why did Largo give Domino a map to this place?
Right.
Because he doesn't seem concerned enough to get it back from Domino when it's obviously that she's betrayed him. So, again, he's just mad.
Not only that, he tells her when he gives it to her, it's the most precious thing he owns besides her. And it does not really factor into the end at all. And as you were saying earlier about this plot, like they're basically going to destroy access to oil across the world by blowing up this Ethiopian oil field. But the plot is that Ernst Stavro Blofeld wants the profit from the oil fields. And if they blow the oil fields up, you're not going to be getting any profit from them.
Well, he's only going to do that if they don't pay him the money.
Right.
So no, you're wrong, Gavin. It makes perfect sense.
This is very plot question mark, James Bond.
Yes, absolutely. As Largo's men lower the bomb into the temple, Bond and Felix start their attack, quickly joined by Leader's fellow CIA agents. Largo's men arm the bomb, and Largo attempts to escape with it. Bond follows suit in a helicopter that drops him down a large well. Bond and Largo fight, and just as Largo gets the upper hand, he is shot by a spear from a gun wielded by Domino. Bond disarms the bomb underwater as Largo dies, and the CIA retrieves the now dead nuke. I can't stress enough that the first nuclear bomb was underneath the White House. We never see it. We never go to the White House. We never they just disarm it off camera.
Is it still there?
Right. Could be.
Well, like so many of these things, like how did they do that?
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah. How did they get it
everything
under
else is
there?
a cakewalk. How did they get a nuclear bomb under the White House?
It's those White House tours. You know,
Oh,
I
that's
watch
true.
National
Yeah.
Treasure.
Yeah, they put it in a waste paper basket. It's all good.
Also, why is there a fully intact underground temple? Why does James Bond have to leave the temple only to be dropped back into the water? There's so many questions.
Well, again, so to compare this to the end of Thunderball, is famously that final battle is too long. It's just endless.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Endless water fighting.
The sea ballet.
But at least there are little set pieces. There's masks being told off. There's trap doors falling onto people. This final fight with Largo and Bond is just one little microcosm of that Thunderball bit. It's just two guys just circling around each other for a little bit until one gets shot. It's a real wet fart of a sequence. And the whole underground battle, again, it just hasn't got the fizz. It just doesn't have the stunt coordination or excitement of all these other films where guys in multicolored romper suits get grenaded off springboards. It's just a bit of a shrug. I don't think we've talked much about Irvin Kershner. Yes, he was riding high off Empire Strikes Back, but thinking about the films of his I've seen, I don't know how good of a director he actually is. RoboCop 2 is a bit lame.
Right.
This is a lame Bond film. I've not seen The Eyes of Laura Mars, and that cast list is stacked. I need to check that out. But
I like The Eyes of Laura Mars, but The Eyes of Laura Mars is basically like a second tier John Carpenter movie, and that's sort of this is definitely the Irving Kershner of RoboCop 2 and not the Irving Kershner of Empire Strikes Back.
It's starting to make me think of how much Irving Kershner lucked into making the best Star Wars film or one of the best Star Wars films, you know?
I think he had better producers for Star Wars.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
writers.
this film was a real battle to make, so it can't have been easy, actually, come to mention it.
No. But back in the Bahamas, Bond and Domino relax in a hot tub just as a man silently stalks their getaway. Bond throws him in the pool, only to realize it's Nigel, sent by M to beg Bond to come back to the Secret Service. Bond says never, and Dominus replies never. The two kiss, and Bond looks directly at the camera and winks.
M says that without you in the service, he fears for the security of the civilized world.
Never again.
Never?
Never, never say never again. Never, never say never again.
Yes, I said what I said.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so, again, it's just a pool. Like, normally this would be like a burning rubber dinghy or something, or he's just at some pool, you know? It just seems a little bit like, oh, whatever.
It's also funny because so much of this movie is people begging Sean Connery to come back. and it's really funny to have that happen multiple times in the film. And you get the impression that, like, after he saved the world, he's retired with Domino somewhere. And it's nice that the Bond girl survived, like, which doesn't always happen. But it's just one of those things, like, none of this matters. None of it makes sense. Why send Nigel? He's not even an agent. He is just like the tourist ambassador to the Bahamas.
I'm assuming it's where is it, Nassau, where this
Yeah.
will take place. I'm assuming that's where he is. I mean, it's also just seeing Rowan Atkinson like do a pratfall is by the by. It would have been good if it was Edward Fox himself being thrown into the pool,
or
Blofeld
even
just
brings the
totally
Q back. You know,
Q. Blofeld just totally disappears. There's like his last scene is him like saying everything's going to plan, and that's it.
Yeah.
Look, I know we're kind of sort of complaining about the very end scene. I do think this is a fun time. I think it's probably best watched with fellow Bond fans with lot of wine. And
once again,
fuckery.
I said it towards the beginning. I don't hate this movie. I don't think it's a good movie, but like it's certainly way more watchable than the Casino Royale parody, and it is such a fascinating film history footnote.
Yeah,
to
it's like a bubble of a film, and you don't want to touch it in case it pots. This happens so rarely. It's like when two volcano films come out at the same time.
Right.
It makes film, film Twitter and film stuff is the most insufferable thing imaginable. But sometimes we can sort of, as I said, my Games on Film podcast, we celebrate these movies because films are really hard to make. And there's so much what-ifery about this film. Like, what if Sean Connery wasn't in this? It's just fascinating. And I think the Bond conversation is richer for it being here. I certainly would. I think it's a lot better than some Bond films. But I struggle to call it a good film.
Yeah, I think I'm the lowest on this film because I did not find it to be as fun as it could have been. I think there was potential, but in the end, I just thought it was kind of long and boring.
As somebody who has now seen Octopussy, though, Chels, do you think this is a better film than Octopussy?
No, I would rather watch Octopussy again. I didn't like Octopussy, and I texted people after. I'm like, it's making me reconsider how I felt about Octopussy.
I'm so torn. Like, I would say one of the things of the Bond fandom has given me is a new appreciation for Octopussy. I was not a fan of Octopussy, but the more people are telling me it's their favorite. It's all about growing up with a certain film, isn't it? So
yes, it truly is.
I feel like Octopussy knew what it was more than this film knew because they were literally rewriting it on set.
This film just didn't know what it wanted to be. It didn't know, it couldn't really spread its wings because it was afraid of being sued. Everything was, you just
like
can't make
weirdly a film under duress.
Yeah, it's like a produced nightmare.
I mean, I think it was part of the legal agreement that they could make sequels to Thunderball. So if this film was enough of a hit, I know it was a hit, but I would have been fascinated to have seen the second Kevin McClory film if it had been made right after this. They would have ended up eating each other's box office, though. It would not have been sustainable.
No. And I think as they would not have been sustainable, this would have been the casualty. I think the McClory series would have petered out, even in the what if scenario, because Eon just had such a lock on it and knew exactly what they were doing and exactly what they were making. And as much as McClory wants to claim that he created the template, like they got to it first, and that's it. It's hard to stop that. We do not get a James Bond will return at the end of this movie because this James Bond will not return, and he never will again. But we do want to talk about some of the stuff that make Bond movies, as we always do. So I'd love to stop for a moment and talk about the Bond women. We have Nicole, Fatima Blush, Domino. As previously mentioned, Nicole and Domino do not really get much of characters, but as I said earlier, Fatima Blush, it's a shame that she's not considered part of the main Bond, the official James Bond series, because she is truly one of the most memorable hench people.
She is now officially in my James Bond canon, as in, like, I don't care what Eon says. I write a personal letter to Jeff Bezos, who now owns the franchise, saying Fatima Blush represent. He's like, what are you talking about?
She's great. Loved her. I do think the other two actresses, like Kim Basinger and whoever plays Nicole, they're good actresses just with nothing to do.
Yes,
like 100%. It's very sad.
Fully forgot Nicole was in this film until she died, and then almost immediately Bond jumps on the motorcycle and forgets all about her.
Exactly. And like it's sad because she's a solid actress. I would have liked a couple more scenes. In the Thunderball version, we got a few more scenes of that character type.
Yeah,
and I liked her a lot.
And she's like weirdly a more rounded character in the actual Thunderball because she's the one who ends up killing herself in order to protect Britain's secrets.
Yeah.
Good for her, as I say, as a Brit.
Yeah, which is even funnier because she's an American in the movie. So.
The Queen, then, and country.
Yeah. In terms of villains, we have Fatima, Largo, and a mostly absent Blofeld. We cannot sing enough praises about Fatima, but also Klaus Maria Brandauer as Largo is way more interesting than the actual Largo we got from Thunderball. And like you said, Harry, yeah, he might look the part with like the eye patch in Thunderball, but here they wanted to make sure that he didn't look, that it wasn't like a visually memorable thing. So they wanted to cast an actor who would be actually memorable, and I think he does a good job.
He's really good in this.
Yeah, it's a whole conversation about villainy being represented by deformity.
Yes, yeah.
And they just don't do it here, which is to be commended.
Which is also really funny because, and I've mentioned it many times before, the Bond in the books has a huge scar on his face, but yet the Bond in the films does not have a single, deformity at all. In fact, is prime human being.
There's a new video game, and that's caused a lot of division, but that Bond does have that scar.
He has the scar. Yeah.
If whatever this Amazon Bond film turns out to be, if he does have the scar, I'd be like, fair play.
Yeah, me too. In terms of gadgets, we get the exploding pen, the laser watch, and the jumping motorcycle. Obviously, the lamest is kind of the jumping motorcycle. And the pen's pretty, as you mentioned, tacky. So I guess laser watch for me wins out, but have your say.
I also have a laser watch. It's great for distracting cats.
It's it's a little thing, but I like the way they make his he uses the laser watch on his shackles to get out of the dungeon, and the way the shackles explode is I would say a little bit alarming if it's happening right next to my hand, but satisfying nonetheless.
And then this is something we started during the Roger Moore era, but I'd like to bring it around here. Connery's outfits, the costume designer on this film was Charles Node, and you can find out more about that on bondsuits.com, though surprisingly not as much as you can about the Eon Bond film series, so they must feel a way about these. Do either of you have a favorite Bond look? I actually think my favorite look in the entire movie is not Bond, it's Fatima Blush, and it's basically anything she wears.
Literally everything she's wearing, she looks like an evil witch in a movie who's about to cast a spell on like Snow White or some shit. She's wonderful. I guess not pictured Rambo James Bond from the beginning. I don't know. He looked silly as hell.
I was going to actually say, maybe this is my straightness coming out. I like that look. I'm a big fan of like Commando mission Bonds when he wears like his mission outfits. But Fatima is the MVP. But I also like sort of the sports casual of the villain of Largo. Again, they made a choice. Interesting stuff. But I think again, everything she wears, Fatima owns. apparently she had a hat with like lots of little daggers in it, which only she knew was there. But I think it helped build her character.
I will say one thing about Bond suits in particular, though I'm a little surprised neither of you picked the overall look that he had of just the overalls. But
I would genuinely like to have seen more. It's actually there's a wonderful photo of him, like a production photo of him in the overalls, but you only see him briefly from a distance, and then another time he's walking through the hotel. They should have had a third of the film when he's in his dungarees. There was a little wolf for PPK in the front pocket. It would have been glorious.
But I do want to say specifically about the suits. One of the things I found interesting in doing my research was this is the first and only time that Sean Connery as Bond gets a very modern suit, and he looked great in all of the other previous suits, but all of his suits specifically reflected the time, and that's actually happening with Roger Moore as well too. So this is actually our first like modern suited Bond, because the suits that he wears in this movie still reflect the way suits kind of look nowadays as well too. And I think that's an interesting thing, that it's kind of the first modern version of Bond that we're getting, and it's not even official. That being said, I still have a tendency to like the way Roger Moore looks in his suits. They got the big shoulders and the tight waist. He really rocks that. So
Oh yeah.
anyways, enough of that. This movie is such a weird, interesting thing. There was never anything like it before. There will never be anything like it again, though I guess never say never again on that. But I am curious to know if either of you have any final thoughts on this film that really wraps it up. No one rushed to speak.
I'm just trying not to repeat myself, I've got to say, which is ironic for a film called Never Say Never Again. Yeah, I think it's wonderful that it exists. It's just such a shame. I feel it's just this film's existence has actually literally hurt so many lives. Come to think of it. Animal, vegetable, and mineral as well. Horse lives, shark lives, but also, it's so much heartache went into it, and this is what they came up with. It seems really sad.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, again, I much prefer it to Casino Royale, the 60s version. I have got a newfound appreciation because I've watched this now a couple of times since you got in touch regarding this podcast, and yeah, I'd happily have this in my DVD box set if I could find my sales my proof
Receipt.
of purchase. Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
I think
that's one of the things that I've enjoyed about doing this is like it has made me. I've often said Octopussy is one of my least favorites, and like I've gotten a new appreciation for Octopussy. I think that I'm getting a new appreciation for even some of the ones I don't particularly care for, and this one included. Even though once again, do not think it's a great movie. I think there's enough fun things in it that I enjoyed it, and I know you didn't love it, Chels, but I get it. I totally get it, especially seeing it for just the one or however many times you watched for this. Like,
Well, it's no 60s Casino Royale, so thank you for that. Although this could have used Orson Welles and some magic and a weird Deborah Carr, just whatever she was doing. Bring more of that to every Bond.
there was some consideration of casting Wells as Blofeld, but they did not do it.
I mean, I went to see
Haters.
For Your Eyes. Have you watched For Your Eyes Only, Chels? I can't
Oh,
remember.
oh yeah.
You have.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I would circling right back to the start about Bond being kind of this through line through cinema and through culture and things like that. Like, For Your Eyes Only is a pretty mid Bond film, and this is take Bond out of it. This is extremely mid or even bad action adventure movie. But there's something about Bond being at the center of it all, which makes you watch. It gives you the excuse, perhaps, to lower your defenses and just sort of enjoy as much as you can kind of a shonky 80s action films. I mean, I always feel films from like 1983 have a sort of weird taint to them, where like the 70s have like the hangover of the 70s is there, but
Yeah.
the 80s haven't properly begun. And it's all kind of here. And I feel like my film education would be lesser if I wasn't a Bond fan, because I would probably watch films from the 60s just a little bit less. And this sort of film just a little bit less. So I kind of wish these curios happen more often. I'm sure they do. We live in a remake culture. We have films which are remakes all the time, but there's just something the world would absolutely be a poorer place without Never Say Never Again. So that is my review.
And I will say, this movie did make me love For Your Eyes Only even more. A movie that I was like mixed positive on.
Yeah,
I'm like,
at
no,
least it's
that was a positive experience now.
at least it's not Never Say Never Again.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Harry. Please tell our agents in the audience where they can find you online.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, a big fan of this podcast and a lot of the podcasts on the Bliss of Jaw network. My brother, Hamish Steele, has a podcast called Super Mario Moments, which goes through the Mario, well, just Super Mario, you've heard of him, stuff. I and my other brother, Rory Steele, did a podcast called Games on Film, where we celebrate video game movies. We're on a hiatus because he actually moved to Australia, and so it's
impossible to
tricky.
schedule.
Well, it's possible, but we're also appreciating a little bit of a break. There's 151 episodes where we cover all movies based on video games, and occasionally games based on famous film franchises like James Bond and Spider-Man and all the other things. And if you want to follow me on the socials, I am usually Only Man Who Can on Letterboxd and Blue Sky and all that jazz.
I love that screen name. It's so good. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a genuine pleasure. And with that, it's case closed on Never Say Never Again. Thank you for listening to the Q Division. If you'd like to listen to our previous episodes, we are available wherever you listen to podcasts. Please make sure to rate and review our show while you're there. You can also find us on Blue Sky and Instagram at QDivisionPod on both, or you can email us at qdivisionpod@gmail.com. Chels, please remind the agents where they can find you.
I am Chels725 on the Blue Sky, the Serialized, which is like TV Letterbox, and then sometimes on actual Letterbox, but not always. And then obviously Q Division here and a Rewatch Pod where we talk about all kinds of TV shows. And then coming in 2026, which is this year totally when we're recording, across the Hooniverse, me and my friend Paige are going through all the new Who episodes in order. Gavin, you've been a guest already. Your episode was amazing. You're going to be on many more because
my goodness,
I'm just inviting the same 4 people to be guests all the time. And I'm super excited. So yeah, everyone go check that out. Across the Hooniverse podcast. And of course, if you can find my Instagram, you might see pictures of Copper Dog and videos because he is trying to get onto my lap right now, this giant bloodhound. So
he's too big for that, but I love him.
It'd be hilarious if like Blofeld was trying to tell NATO about his new threat to the world, and this dog just wouldn't get off his lap. Like, I'm trying to threaten the world.
He's good as long as I'm petting him right now. He's been such a good boy just laying there for this whole recording.
And as for me, you can find my declassified account on It's Gavin on Blue Sky. That's SHHITSGAVIN. Or you can find me on Instagram at GavinMev, GAVINMEV. You can also find my other long-running film podcast at The Mixed Reviews on any podcast platform, co-hosted by my good friend Louis Rondon. To find more information about The Mixed Reviews, please visit glitterjaw.com/mix-reviews. And until next time, we hope we have left you shaken, not stirred.
And teach you to never say never again. I'll get you, I'll get you, I'll read you, I'll teach you, I'll take you, I'll make you.
I'm hoping for some gratuitous sex and violence coming up on the old podcast.